Chapter 3052. The Grand Finale, 19. Fui's face was pale as a sheet. Although he did not know the true reason, he saw that he had collapsed in the scene. He also seemed to feel the despair and regret that he had at that time. His heart trembled, and he held Gu Shijio beside him. In a hoarse voice, he said, "Shijio, I am sorry." He apologized for his mistake in his previous life. Gu Zijia's emotions also fluctuated. She turned and hugged him and shook her head slightly. "All has passed. We are good now." Yes, they were very good now. Anything suffered in the past had passed. Now, they only needed to solve one problem. Fui looked at Fan Qianshi and said coldly, "It seems she did not do anything bad to you." Fan Qianshi was still staring at the place where the woman in white dissipated. He did not turn to look at Fui, but it was clear that his face was terribly pale. He repeated what Fui had said as though he was in a trance. "Yes, she did not do anything bad to me." Then, he turned his head and looked at the two people who were hugging each other. In a second, he quickly turned away. But now, a smile seemed to emerge on his face. "It seems that I was very wrong about the past." Even though he was smiling, his voice sounded like he was actually crying. He muttered, "It's all wrong." He started to regret all that he had done deeply. Nevertheless, he also knew that standing here and feeling sorry would not change anything. All of a sudden, he charged toward the exit of the hall. Gu Shijio and Fui looked at each other and naturally followed behind him. Soon, the three of them left the shrine and disappeared in the blink of an eye. A moment later, two figures appeared in the center of the hall. One was a white-haired man wearing a robe with a splash of ink on light green silk. A starry sky picture could be seen on his robe. The man's attire seemed to flutter in the wind when he appeared, making the stars also seem to move around his body. His hair was like snow being tied up in a light blue hairpin. His facial features were stunning, but his eyes, in particular, were like stars and rivers. When he raised his hand, he looked like the ruler of the world. The other figure was a candle dragon. To be specific, it was a pink candle dragon. This pink candle dragon was gorgeous at about 70 to 80 feet in length. Its scales were crystal clear and transparent, while its eyes were in a beautiful sea blue color. When it blinked, it seemed to stir the blue waves in the depths of its eyes. The small lantern on the head was also very unique. It looked like it carried the eye of God. "Were you successful?" The pink candle dragon looked in the direction where the three people left and asked. The white-haired man replied, "Half successful." His voice was so foreign and magnetic that it sounded as if it was coming down from the sky. "Half." Fan Qianshi has already realized that he should go out and clean up the mess. He will not be partnering with the inner demon from now on. Besides, your father and mother will be collaborating with each other. Together, they should be able to destroy this desert. Why do you consider this only half successful? The pink candle dragon did not understand. The white-haired man stared in a direction where dark clouds rolled in. He knew that heaven and the earth seemed to be upside down and could not help but sigh. The demon is not just the inner demon of the former god of creation. Her soul has mixed too much with the fierceness of God. The degree of her treacherousness has made her evolve. She has privately changed some of the settings in the desert, and I am afraid that even Fan Qianshi will no longer be able to control her. The total grievances in the desert are close to 4 million now. With so many resentful spirits condensed together, it is enough to destroy the entire world. Can't you do anything? The pink candle dragon's eyes widened as it asked. You're the master of the heavenly law, right? Can't you just snap your fingers and solve the situation? Chapter 3053. The Grand Finale, 20. The white-haired man did not answer its question, but used his fingers to comb his own white hair before going off topic. "Little Pink, do you think my hair makes me look handsome?" Little Pink paused for a moment before replying. "It's cool. You look great as the master of the heavenly law." The white-haired man shook his head slightly and sighed. The master of the heavenly law does not actually have white hair. In fact, my hair used to be black and shiny with hints of purple. Some might say that it was shinier than the galaxy. Unfortunately, I cannot let you see it. Little Pink's mouth was ajar. Why is it now white? In fact, it is pure white without any color mixed in between. Stupid. It is because my skills and energy have almost been depleted. Naturally, my hair will turn white first. I used all of my power just to project the past for them earlier. I only hope that the bastard will wake up. Little Pink was panicked by the word depleted. It looked at him with widened eyes and said, "Are you out of power? How come? I saw that when you were restored, you looked very powerful. Besides, you also helped me to expel the evil spirit out of my body and let me recover my original appearance. You made it look so easy." The white-haired man chuckled. "Have you heard of the return light?" Little Pink was stunned. The white-haired man faintly continued, "I came here by chance, and now everything could be changed. Naturally, I should have disappeared already." This white-haired man was Di Hao. He had a terrible time in the desert before finally restoring his abilities. The demon was vicious and wanted to take the opportunity to kill him, saying that he should not have come to the world because she wanted to have her own child with Di Fui. Thus, she planned for his other 2 children to die miserably. When she was about to kill him, Di Fui somehow managed to break her illusion and distracted her. In fact, she was so distracted that Di Hao had the opportunity to escape together with the pink candle dragon. The demon did not give up and sent many grievances to hunt him in the desert. In the process of trying to get rid of the evil spirits, Di Hao triggered something in his body that removed his childlike appearance and restored his former identity as the master of the heavenly law. Nevertheless, since the future had been changed so drastically, he estimated that he did not have much time left here. His remaining power as the master of the heavenly law was minimal too. His first task was to dispel 10,000 years of evil energy from Little Pink's body. Then, he used whatever was left to cast the illusion of the forbidden land of God and looked for an opportunity to pull in all the relevant people to this place. With his power truly depleted, the most that he could do was to make himself invisible. He would not be able to handle the mess outside at this point. He closed his eyes slightly, and Little Pink grew quite worried looking at his pale face. Although he was standing still, there was a glimmer on his body that suggested he could disappear soon. "Are you okay?" Little Pink used his mouth to tug at his robe, but unexpectedly pulled nothing. Little Pink was stunned. You. Di Hao looked at it and sighed softly. "Little Pink, go and look for your master." Little Pink looked confused. "Who is my master?" "The former god of creation, Gu Shijio." Little Pink's eyes were rather round at the minute as it stared at Di Hao. Meanwhile, Di Hao continued to speak. "You were injured by your master and had been hibernating for 10,000 years. When you woke up, you forgot everything. However, under your subconscious mind, you found your way back to your original master. As a result, you found the demon. Unfortunately, she took advantage of you and used you as a guardian in the desert." Chapter 3054, The Grand Finale, 21. Little Pink could not believe what he had just said. It finally had a thorough understanding of its own history, which also explained why it was always unnoticeably drawn to Gu Shijio. It always hoped that someday it would become her majestic pet. Little did it know that it had always been Gu Zigius. It was the demon's interception that cut their connection off. It was eager to look for Gu Shijio, but was concerned for Di Hao as well. "What about you?" Di Hao did not answer its question. He only waved at it and said, "Just go. Remember, both of them have to work together in order to destroy the violent desert, once and for all." In a second, Little Pink's vision suddenly became blur and cloudy. Apparently, the illusion of the forbidden land of God began to fall apart. From afar, Little Pink caught a glimpse of Di Hao. His body turned translucent and slowly faded to dust, just like everything else around him. Tearfully, it cried out loud, "Young master! Hey, we are falling again. Going down." The mussel called out. After a loud bang, it found itself back on the sand. The fall was so great that its shells almost broke apart. The mussel, along with Lu Wu, Long Sai, and Hua Yin, were waiting outside of the grand hall when Fan Qianshi suddenly ran out with his face looking aghast with terror. He ran towards the door, frantically. Worried, the mussel thought that he was running away, so it volunteered to stop him. Where do you think you are going? Get off. Fan Qianshi swiftly swept the muscle out of his way. The muscle had no resistance against his strength, so it rolled and tumbled its way to the side. Triggered by his arrogance, Lu Wu was ready to fight him. Let him go. A voice called out. It was Di Fui who stopped Lu Wu. While Lu Wu was still dumbstruck, Fan Qianshi already disappeared. Hua Yin was dumbfounded, too, at how things changed so abruptly. She quickly followed her master, but Fan Qianshi furiously rejected her. Why are you still behind me? Go away. Wu Yin, you no longer serve me. You are free to go. You have nothing to do with me anymore. Go and find someone else. He tossed her an odd-looking piece of jade and walked away without looking back. Bewildered, she watched helplessly as he walked away and then picked up the jade and held it tightly in her hand. Long Sai walked to her side. What is this? The curse of my fate, Hua Yin murmured. Long Sai knew exactly what it was about. Whoever holds the fate curse shall practice full power on one's life course. Fan Qianshi used to keep a curse on Hua Yan's life, so she had to obey his every instruction. If she ever misbehaved, he could always perform a small trick on the jade that would make her suffer in agony. Giving the fate curse back to her means that she was free for good. She could finally go her own way and be with anyone she wanted. The woman was smart, beautiful, and powerful. Although she seemed cold and unapproachable, none of her unfriendliness managed to keep her admirers away. Many from the Celestial Kingdom had their hearts surrendered to her. As Long Sai's master, she was treated with great respect. She had her freedom at last, but sadness filled her heart. She stood there, clutching the jade, feeling utterly lost. Let's go, Long Sai said, freeing her from her contemplation. Oddly enough, she seemed helpless. Where shall we go? They're going out now. Let's go with them. Hua Yin finally noticed that everyone was leaving already. She put her emotions aside and joined them. Before they even made it out through the gate, the whole place was already crumbling down. The stars, the walkway, the grand hall, and the shrine were all shaking aggressively. Like a paper house in the wind, the whole place was falling apart. Chapter 3055, the grand finale, 22. Fortunately, the muscle remained calm in the face of danger. Get in here, everyone. Let's go back the same way we came in. It improvised. Long Sai dragged Hua Yin into its shell. However, the black candle dragon hesitated for a moment. In the end, after contemplating, it decided to join the group. Lu Wu was the last one that made its way in. As for Gu Shijiao and Di Fui, they were nowhere to be seen. The same could be said for Fan Qianshi. Meanwhile, the ground in the place started to break apart as soon as the muscle sealed its shells, thus sending the muscle and the gang down a rabbit hole. Nothing changed about the desert. Perhaps the main noticeable difference was that the winds had grown stronger due to the increased number of unrelenting spirits that were busy swallowing everything in their path. Soon, the muscle found itself in the face of another great danger. The winds were approaching it at full speed. Panicked, it could not help but curse the desert. Why are we still here in this damn place? Even though it was in pain because of its hard fall, it tried its best to shrug off the pain, since there were many people's lives depending on him. Quickly, it drilled into the ground again. The unbearable underground heat sent it back to the surface right away. It was terribly hot because of the molten rock within the Earth's crust. Its shells almost melted away due to the heat. The moment it arrived back on the surface, evil spirits were coming at them right away. Since the muscle did not want to risk going underground again, it had nowhere to run. Right at the brink of it being attacked, two powerful figures suddenly showed up to avert the calamity. Master! The muscle burst into tears and cried tears of gratitude as it rolled over toward its savior. Di Fui and Gu Shijiao made their way to the rescue, just in time. With a wave, she created a wizardry barrier to keep everyone safe within the circle. Where is everyone else? They're all here. The muscle opened up its shells. Long Sai, Hua Yin, the Black Candle Dragon, and Lu Wu were all in there. No one was left behind in the tumbling hall. The sight of all of them made Gu Shijiao feel relieved. Curiously, the muscle looked Gu Shijiao in the eye and asked, Master, Are you crying? Gu's Zygia's bloodshot eyes were wet, and tears could be seen rolling down her cheeks. She was dumbstruck by the muscle's sudden concern and quickly wiped the tears away and said, "There is dust in my eyes. It is irritating." A sudden, deepening gloom in her heart started haunting her, right before the forbidden land of God fell apart. It was an unexplainable, excruciating pain that felt as if something important in her life was taken away. Nevertheless, she could not remember what it was all about. Since then, she had been tearing nonstop. To focus on the matter at hand, she dismissed those feelings and felt that it was probably because she had a peek at her depressing past. She did not think twice about it. Difui had a presentiment about the illusion. He knew that something was wrong the moment everything started coming down. Through the fragments, he looked up, trying to see who was behind it all. "How air," he softly said. He was shocked and greatly saddened by what he saw, for he knew that it was their last goodbye. Gu Shijio was too busy crying to notice Difui's emotional response. Meanwhile, the howling winds reached a deafening crescendo, so she did not even hear what he said. The tears he shed were also unnoticed. As soon as they landed in the desert, they adjusted themselves to prepare for incoming challenges. They quickly looked for their companions and found them in time to save their lives. No one was harmed, and luck seemed to be on their side. On the outside of the wizardry barrier, the evil spirits continued to make loud, squealing sounds. The entire place had fallen into complete darkness, as if the dawn of doomsday had approached. Unfortunately, they were all still in the desert, caged within its fury. "Where is Fan Xianshi?" The muscle broke its silence. The man who started the trouble should be responsible for ending it all, not run away. He should be here in the desert. Perhaps he is working on a way to stop the desert from expanding, Difui replied. Chapter 3056. The Grand Finale, 23. The man is turning away from the dark side? How can an evil man like him turn away from his roots all of a sudden? The muscle refused to believe Difui. Longsai paused to give Hua a quick look. He thought that the muscle's harsh statement would anger her, but she just stood there quietly like a statue. She must have gone through a really tough time under Fan Xianshi, so now that she was finally free, there was no point in standing by him anymore. Meanwhile, the muscle had abused Fan Xianshi enough for today, so it looked around in search of another victim. The demon must be hiding here somewhere. What is the point of sending this crowd of horrible spirits to surround us? Amused, someone answered with a screeching voice from afar. What a disrespectful creature. Why should I need to hide from you? Ghastly, the eerie laughter was so loud and clear that it was impossible for them to even hear from the evil spirits at the time. Stunned, the muscle looked around anxiously. Where did that voice come from? There she is. Luwu pointed its claw in a particular direction. The crowd looked in the direction and saw many evil spirits seemingly coagulating into one, thus transforming into the evil woman. She still had the same appearance as before, but was surrounded with even more dark energy. She looked at them ruthlessly, as if she was eager to take their souls away. "You are all here. Great. That saves me a lot of time." Suddenly, gusts of wind whispered from above before a pink figure flew down from the sky. It made an epic landing on the ground and crushed the wicked woman into pieces. Bam! The lattice body was torn into pieces of evil spirits. The pink figure then leaped into action again and checked its new surroundings. Gu Shijio was the first one that caught its attention. "Master!" it called out loud as it rushed to her. Little Pink was actually a very beautiful candle dragon. It was about 80 feet long. Dazzlingly, its scales were luminous and glowed from within. Its eyes were dreamy and filled with an attractive hue of blue, as sparkling as a vast blue river. Awestruck, the black candle dragon looked at Little Pink in disbelief. "Master, I am Little Pink." The pink candle dragon brought itself right in front of the wizardry barrier while fixing its delightful eyes on Gu Shijio. As strange as it seemed, the evil spirits lost their ferocity all of a sudden when the pink candle dragon came by. In fact, they appeared to be scared. They ceased their attack, and instead, they made way for it to come through. Gu Shijio was astonished at the sight of the creature. She would not usually trust anyone, but she chose to believe the pink candle dragon, despite its new appearance. "Little Pink," she called out familiarly, with a hint of sadness. Difui studied her expression before letting the pink candle dragon in. She somehow thought that someone else should be here with the pink candle dragon, but could not recall who he or she was. All she knew was that her heart was moved by great sorrow. After a moment of deep thought, she asked, "Little Pink, how did you become so beautiful all of a sudden?" "Perhaps the removal of evil energy from my body has done me a great deal. Years of immersing myself in evil energy had changed my appearance." "Who removed the evil energy for you?" Little Pink was trapped in the desert for many years, and yet it could never remove the evil energy on its own. Someone must have helped. Gu Shijio was straight to the point, and Little Pink was dumbfounded by the question. It knew that someone helped it, but could not remember who. Chapter 3057. The Grand Finale, 24. While it was still trying hard to recall who had helped it, the black candle dragon approached it with a look of utter disbelief. "Are you really Little Pink?" Little Pink could not help but roll its eyes. "As real as I can ever be." Little Black was crushed. The sudden revelation saddened it. "When did you become so hideous? I much prefer the chubby version of you. Get away from me." Little Pink gave it a hard slap on the face. On the outside of the wizardry barrier, the lady in white made her appearance again in the mass of resentful, evil spirits. She took a look at the pink candle dragon and then at Gu Shijio, with eyes full of loath and disgust. "I see. That useless candle dragon has gone off and recognized you as its master instead of me. I have never done it any wrong and kept it alive for so long, yet it chose to betray me. Damn it! She is my master. She has always been. You're not. You are just an evil being formed from countless resentful spirits. You were never the creation deity. And when exactly have you ever treated me well? You have confined me in this hell of a place for thousands and thousands of years to be scorched and burned under the sun. I would have rather been dead." The pink candle dragon called the demon out loud for all the mistreatments and injustice that it had suffered throughout the years. The lady in white was awfully offended based on the expression on her face. "I wanted to keep you alive, little creature. However, that seems unnecessary now. You're going to die, like the rest of them," she scornfully replied. Then, she waved her hands to summon the evil spirits to attack all of them. They crowded together and surrounded the wizardry barrier in a violent assault. It seemed that some sort of dark magic must have strengthened these evil spirits, making them extraordinarily fierce and violent. Each of them appeared to be as powerful as a mighty immortal now. Also, they did not fear death. Difui's wizardry barrier was supposed to be corrosive to those spirits. A single touch would burn them away immediately. However, they did not back down at all. In a continuous motion, they attacked the wizardry barrier in an attempt to shatter it. Although the wizardry barrier was unaffected by the impact, their evil aura seemed to be stripping the wizardry barrier of its defense. Every touch on the barrier would turn an evil spirit into dust. The wizardry barrier, in turn, would be polluted with many dark spots as soon as the spirits disappeared. These dark spots continued to accumulate on the outer surface, slowly decaying the wizardry barrier's stability. As soon as Gu Zigius returned to her physical body, her power was greatly increased. Seeing Difui's remarkable perseverance, even in the face of extreme difficulty, prompted her to join forces. In an instant, the wizardry barrier was finally secured. Nevertheless, the two of them knew that this was no solution. They would be exhausted eventually, and it seemed that the evil spirits would still be coming at them. "We need to get out of here," Gu Shijio said in all seriousness. Harshly, she threw the surrounding evil spirits a quick look and announced, "These things will either have to be purified or destroyed." Difui calmly replied, "There are too many of them. Their resentment is too strong to be purified. They have to be destroyed." Gu Shijio took a moment to consider a plan with the highest chance of success. These resentful spirits were ordinary people who were unfortunately swallowed and savagely killed by the storm, thus turning them evil. They did not even have a chance to be redeemed from their purgatory. Knowing Di Fui, he would not suggest destroying the spirits if he had a choice. Hence, destroying the spirits seemed like the only way. All of a sudden, she was reminded of Fan Qianshi. She had no memory of her previous life. The images reminded her of their previous relationship as master and disciple, and how well she had treasured him as her successor. Even in her dying days, she strived to build his future for him. Knowing her past gave her a sense of confusion about Fan Qianshi. She turned around and asked the group about his whereabouts. Fan Qianshi, have any of you seen him? The group shook their heads in unison. Additionally, the muscle exclaimed in a fury, "He is the worst. He will surely join forces with that evil woman." "That is not possible," Gu Shijio said after thoughtful consideration. Meanwhile, an explosion broke out dramatically. It appeared as if the sky was falling. The violent incident shook the masses of resentful spirits as a figure flashed by and made a surprise entrance. "Let's go now. Get out of here." Gu Shijio was shocked. Fan Qianshi had made his way to their rescue. The heavily obscured sky suddenly became bright again, while a whirling mass of air streamed all the way down from above, making it look like a Milky Way against the dark background. Di Fui had the wit to realize that the only way out was up. Before Fan Qianshi even made any instruction, he was already leading the group up while still securing the wizardry barrier. Chapter 3058, the grand finale, 25. Surprisingly, they were then taken into a high-speed vortex, which was 100 times faster than a washing machine, in Gu Zijia's opinion. They were spun on and on for quite a while, before they made an abrupt collision with a group of people. They were not mistaken. They had indeed collided with a group of people. It was a place filled with burned trees and collapsed buildings. The group of people used to look great, with impressive power and auspicious aura surrounding them. But now all of them looked equally dirty and drawn. The frantic desert was at least a dozen kilometers away from where they were, but their surroundings were already toasted and burned. Without any protective layer, these powerful people would end up being charcoals, just like everything else in close proximity. When Di Fui and the group made their surprise landing, these people quickly went in different directions to make space. Despite being on the ground, the muscle still had the feeling that it was spinning around. It continued to suffer from dizzy spells for some time, and when it finally regained its focus, it found itself surrounded by a group of enthusiastic immortals. "Hey, you are still alive. Great Deity Gu. Hey, Great Deity Gu is here. General Long, Mighty Immortal Hua, you are both here. That is great. Muscle, Lu Wu. Hey, there are two strange-looking dragons here, too. Who are these two? You must be Prince Nianma, aren't you? God, you look so different now." A crowd of excited people clamored around the muscle. These people consisted of leaders from various kingdoms. They could certainly recognize Gu Shijio, the powerful great deity. Moreover, General Long Sai and Mighty Immortal Hua Yan were instantly recognizable, too, due to their recent popularity. The muscle and Lu Wu had been spending a great amount of time in the upper bound. Needless to say, the muscle had always been very outgoing, which earned it heaps of friends in the Celestial Kingdom. As for Di Fui, he was only a child during his time in the upper bound as Shun Yinma. Most of them remembered him as a boy. During his adventures, he used the name of Mr. Fui to carve a niche for himself. Hence, many could not recognize him, for he had always been wearing a mask. With the impression of a lord, his aura was entirely contrary to that of an ordinary immortal. Never had he shown up in front of the immortals with his new looks, so most of them did not know who he actually was. Also, Fan Qianshi was not any better known. Even when he did show up, he always had his mask on. Like a savior, he would always disappear right after he rectified any issues. In fact, the man was known as Mr. Savior, a name made for the mysterious yet influential man. However, Mr. Savior was no longer looking like his name. His unkempt appearance and his aura were so different from how he was normally perceived. They could not recognize him at all, so no one even came to greet him. He was even less popular than the muscle. Meanwhile, Di Fui could not care less about his popularity. He looked around to study their current situation. The people here had done what he instructed the 8 mythical beings and joined forces to make a massive array formation in an attempt to control the expanding desert. Nevertheless, it was too fierce to be brought under control. In only a few hours, the desert broke loose and became even more savage, leading to a quarter of their forces to be injured. Thus, many retreated. Di Fui made a quick analysis and realized that some already left the group in order to stay safe from the impending troubles. Only a few stayed behind, as they could not leave the common people behind while they were still suffering in agony. They continued to work on another wizardry barrier after the first one failed. Chapter 3059. The Grand Finale, 26. Although the wizardry barrier was not strong enough to stop the frantic desert from expanding, it could, at the very least, stop the desert from growing in a particular direction. That way, they could buy the common people some time to flee. As expected, the array formation was very physically demanding. Before Di Fui showed up, the team was like a spent force that was on the verge of giving up. They were already contemplating if they should give up on the lives of millions, as they knew they could not hold it together much longer. Among those who virtuously stayed behind were generals from the Monster Kingdom, and some were respected leaders from the Devil Kingdom. Even the Emperor Immortal and his men were still present. There were about 110 men in total. To keep the array formation running, they had to take turns to support the barricade with their power. The clamoring crowd was actually the one who had just done their shift. All of them were equally exhausted, and some had already collapsed on the ground. Di Fui and the group's presence was a hopeful sight for them. They quickly asked about the desert's condition from within, which was when Bai Zhe, Yin Yanli, Kuan Shui, the 4 messengers, and the guardians from the Shura world made their timely arrival. Bai Zhe felt tearful as soon as it saw Gu Shijio and Di Fui. They all got into a warm embrace. "Young master, young lady, master, Shijio, my lord." Both Gu Shijio and Di Fui were addressed in all kinds of titles. As soon as the rest heard the titles, realization dawned on them suddenly. Little had they realized that the powerful man of purple grace and elegance was actually Prince Nyima. Without a doubt, they bowed to him. It was a widespread sight of respect and submission to Di Fui all at once. Meanwhile, Fan Qianshi stood and watched quietly as everything unfolded. Di Fui had no time for socializing now. He waved his hand at the clamoring crowd as a sign to keep them quiet. He looked stern and fierce. The man's powerful aura was intimidating, so they quickly stopped talking. "How can we stop it? Speak." He directed his assertion of authority at Fan Qianshi. Without wasting any time, Fan Qianshi told him everything he needed to know. It was a solution that he had come up with long before his whole plan went haywire. He had planned to keep Di Fui in confinement before injuring the demon. He would then propose an ultimate solution for everyone to seal away the ferocious desert, which was meant to be a strategy for him to gain popularity as a savior for all. He would then take over the 6 worlds as their leader. He thought that it was a useful solution to solve the problems of the desert once and for all. Even the resentful spirits could be freed from purgatory, not dusted. This method was a little complex, but not too many people were needed. Only 200 excellent fighters were requested to take part. Nevertheless, not everyone was convinced by his proposal. Kuan Shui and the rest of them knew how cunning he was, so they refused to trust him and his plan, thinking that it was still part of a major plan of wickedness. In fact, they loathed him on sight, especially Yin Yanli, for he was reminded of his parents' suffering. He would have attacked Fan Qianshi if they had not been in this unpleasant situation together. As for those who did not know Fan Qianshi very well, they could not trust him completely either. He was not the man that they pictured him to be. However, Di Fui seemed convinced. "Everyone do as he says," he instructed. The crowd was visibly confused. At first, only Di Fui's men chose to obey his instructions. The rest was not quite sure if they should submit to Di Fuy's authority, especially in these times of great danger. Some of them only respected him because of his powerful parents. Chapter 3060, The Grand Finale, 27. After all, it was necessary to completely deform the existing array and reset it again according to the solution suggested by Fan Qianshi. Otherwise, everyone would be engulfed by the storm in the desert. Nevertheless, the people who had stayed back were the elites of the elite. They did not usually compromise with anyone. Each of them had their own personalities. Hence, when Di Fui gave his order, most people stayed in place. Some of them resisted and questioned him as they thought it was too risky. If his plan failed, the array that they were keeping together would be ruined, and a dozen immortal lives would be sacrificed too. Clearly, there were divergent opinions and a moment of confusion. Gu Shijiu frowned slightly as she knew the method mentioned by Fan Qianshi required everyone to work together. Thus, even if she forced them to compromise, they might not be convinced, and there would be a great reduction in the effect of the strategy. She wondered how she could help to dispel everyone's concerns in such a short time. She took a breath and organized a speech in her mind that everyone might believe in. But just when she was about to speak, Fan Qianshi had already started a conversation. "I'm the one who created this desert. I certainly know how it works and what is the best way to destroy it." Truth like this felt like a pot of cold water being poured into a pan of boiling oil. Everyone exploded instantly. Some could not stop cursing him. Others refused to believe it. Some thought that he was mad. Nevertheless, the widely perceived idea was that he deliberately said those things in order to gain attention. "Please, stop talking nonsense. This desert has existed for hundreds of thousands of years. It is older than the Divine Lord and the Great Devil. Looking at its degree of viciousness, even tens of thousands of celestial beings could not make this. In fact, your spiritual power is only as good as a great deity. I don't intend to despise you, but even 10,000 of you can't do this. You're fooling around with us. Do you think you are the god of creation or the master of the heavenly law?" When this person finished sharing his opinions, he immediately received cheers of support from most people who were present. In short, everyone laughed at him. Obviously, he was a great deity, but he regarded himself as the god of creation or the master of the heavenly law. The elites had heard about these two powerful people. Of course, they only knew that these two legendary beings existed and were in charge of the 6 realms. They were responsible for the rise and fall of the world. These two were the omnipotent deities in the people's minds, but no one could confirm if they really existed. Nevertheless, it made sense that only these two could create such a monstrous catastrophe. But Fan Qianshi certainly did not look to be one of the two people. There was a lot of ridicule going on until Hua Yin took a deep breath and spoke loudly. "My lord is indeed the god of creation. I am his subordinate." No one spoke a word after they heard what Hua Yin had to say. But after 3 seconds of silence, the crowd was pissed off again. Hua Yin had been in the limelight in the upper bound lately. Everyone knew her capabilities. She was so good that she almost had no worthy opponents in the upper bound. Also, she had never lied. Her words were quite credible. However, even if everyone reluctantly believed that he was the god of creation, other related questions would surely be running in their minds. Since you were the god of creation, why did you create this desert? Shouldn't the god of creation be compassionate and do his or her best to protect the world? While they were busy clamoring, Di Fuyis spoke up. "The array you have created is about to break and cannot even last for an hour more. Now, you have 2 options. 1, you can continue to ask tons of questions until you get a good explanation from him and let the opportunity slip. 2, shut up and do what he says. You can continue to ask these insignificant questions after we seal this monstrous desert, all right? Which one do you choose?" His voice was icy cold and harsh like a heavy hammer, giving everyone a knock on their heads. The crowd looked at each other and finally stopped rebelling. Instead, they began to reset everything according to what Fan Qianshi instructed. Chapter 3061, The Grand Finale, 28, The crowd rushed to their positions to get ready and realized that all of Fuy's men were already ready. The Monster King was a capable man born with unique talents. He was physically strong and witty. His nose was tall and pointy, thus giving his face a naturally stern look. The man managed to put his leadership into proper use, and within a century, the entire Monster Kingdom was brought under his rule. Both his literary and military talents were distinguished, making him a man as dignified and noble as Schwerlon. In addition to his talents, he was a man known to be very fussy. His men dared not even say a thing that was against his words. His instructions were to be obeyed unconditionally. That was how he grew more and more arrogant. Failing to obey him would result in death. He and his men ran into Yun Yanli while positioning themselves. There was a spot that should be under Yun Yanli's supervision, but the Monster King thought that it was far more significant than the other positions, so he insisted on taking over. As soon as he arrived, he gave Yun Yanli an unwelcoming look to kick him away. Yun Yanli did not care about the unnecessary theatrics and continued to work on the array formation as planned. Impatiently, the Monster King signaled his men to put Yun Yanli out of his way. "Get out. You are too disabled to perform your duties well." Yun Yanli gave him a hard slap in return for his rudeness. The man felt offended and hated it when people called him disabled. He would have crushed the rude soldier into bits, but his duty was his biggest priority at the moment. The soldier took a hard hit and rolled away for quite some time before coming to a stop. The Monster King did not see that coming, obviously. Although the soldier was not his best, the man he chose was strong enough to defeat a general in the upper bound. Never had he thought that his soldier would be defeated by an opponent that he once thought was disabled and weak. The Monster King stepped forward and said, "I did not know that this pretty man is actually quite strong. I have underestimated you, for sure." He hated pretty men and thought all men should be masculine and tough. He even trained all of his soldiers to be muscular. Naturally, he was not fond of the son of the celestial being and great devil as well. He thought that the man was only a lucky man who had inherited his authority from his parents. As for Fuy's followers, they all looked equally useless in the Monster King's opinion, except for the 8 majestic creatures. He thought that Fuy's weak-looking followers must be assuming Fuy's authority as their own. The Monster King had to obey Fuy in order to carry out the plan. When the current problem was solved, he would surely pull Fuy down for questioning. All this while, he had been suppressing his urge to challenge Fuy. He was able to keep his composure in front of Fuy, but not so much in front of Fuy's followers. He disrespected Yun Yanli to the core because of his obvious disability, so he wanted to chase the eyesore away. It surely came as a surprise to him that the disabled man was far more able than he had thought. His soldier had rolled away, pathetically. Embarrassed, he felt the need to regain his reputation, so he used his authority as a king to intimidate Yun Yanli. However, Yun Yanli did not seem to care. The Monster King's words were not taken seriously at all, and Yun Yanli continued establishing the new array formation. The Monster King was even more embarrassed now and turned around to signal another macho soldier to make a move. The soldier walked towards Yun Yanli and clasped his shoulder. "Hey, pretty boy, the Monster King is talking to you." The soldier channeled all of his monstrous strength into his grip on Yun Yanli's shoulder. The soldier intended to make it clear that Yun Yanli would lose his other arm if he chose to rebel again. Before Yun Yanli even made a move, the soldier's wrist was already seized and held firmly by a stranger. A gentleman only uses his tongue and not his fist. "Why are you being so violent?" His voice was soft, but the same gentleness did not apply to his grasp. Aghast, the soldier felt as if his wrist was tightly chained. With a hard pull, the soldier struggled to get loose. The stranger saw it coming, so he immediately let go of the soldier's wrist, and the man lost his balance and rolled his way back to the Monster King's feet. The Monster King was speechless. He looked at the stranger and was astonished. The stranger had a charming but androgynous appearance. With a smile, the handsome man stood tall while being exceedingly graceful. The handsome man shook his hand in disbelief and looked at the soldier apologetically. "I'm so sorry." Did I hurt you? I might have been too harsh on you. Are you injured? The macho soldier's wrist was already bruised. He held back the discomfort and answered with a smile. Who are you? He politely asked, while trying hard not to make a fuss. Casually, the handsome man pulled a strand of his hair back and said, I am the leader of young Master Dis 8 Guardians. I am here to make sure that no one is making a scene, which leads me to this question. Were you just talking or trying to making trouble? The Monster King was speechless. Harshly, he replied, just talking. He then left swiftly. His soldiers were shocked by his retreat. They paused to digest the defeat for a while. Your Majesty, why didn't you teach that pretty boy a lesson? A soldier finally gathered enough courage to ask. The Monster King was always irritated by androgyny. Surprisingly, he pulled back from the fight this time. The Monster King answered icily, we should put the plan above everything else. There is no need for us to downgrade to their level. In fact, he was a smart man. One move from Kuan Shui was enough to prove his strength. Clearly, the man was stronger than any of his soldiers. Furthermore, the disabled man was not an easy target. Perhaps the Monster King himself would not be able to take both of them down. Kuan Shui and Yun Yanli were still in sight, so the Monster King could easily see their moves. Both of them worked together to establish the array formation very quickly. Within streaks of dazzling light, a part of the array formation slowly took form. His soldiers, on quite the contrary, were only halfway done with their tasks. Things seemed rather messy on his end. Are you all useless? You have done so little after so long. He shouted in anger, embarrassed by his men's lack of efficiency. His soldiers felt quite bitter about the reprimand. They worked tirelessly, but the array formation was far too complex for them to get a hold of so quickly. Following their king's formal expression of disapproval, the soldiers became even more hesitant. Half an hour later, every other point of the array formation was done, except for the Monster King's side. Your Highness, your part of the array formation is quite uniquely yours. I say, a voice came interrupting. The Monster King looked up, only to see Kuan Zui's stunningly beautiful face. Why are you here? He asked with his teeth gritted. He actually hoped that Kuan Shui was here to help. One hopeful look was enough for Kuan Shui to read his mind. So Kuan Shui took a look at the helpless soldiers and asked, what are you trying to work on now? Panicked, the soldiers told him honestly that there were 2 steps that they had missed. I know how to work on those 2 steps, Kuan Shui slowly said. You do. The soldiers were hopeful. But I will not tell you, even if I do. Kuan Shui put his arms across his chest in a clear refusal to help. Shocked, the Monster King did not expect that Kuan Shui was only here to mock him. You are not any better, he said in utter disapproval. Provoking me will not work, Kuan Shui answered while waving his index finger at him. He then walked away, leaving the Monster King in a fury. The Monster King continued to watch as Kuan Shui and Yun Yanli finished off others' unfinished tasks quickly and effectively. With his fists clenched, anger and irritation filled his heart. Secretly, he felt a twinge of envy for what the rest had accomplished before him. He had clearly underestimated Prince Nianmo's soldiers and started to wonder if the powerful Divine Lord himself must have assigned these powerful people to Di Fui. What a lucky boy with a thoughtful dad, the Monster King thought. Why are you not done yet? A sudden voice came interrupting again. The Monster King was too busy indulging in his unspoken criticism to notice Di Fui's presence. Shocked, he never thought that someone could easily get past his line of defense within 30 feet of him without triggering his security at all. To make matters worse, Di Fui was standing right in front of him, and yet he was unaware of it. Di Fui was the prettiest boy of them all, with a beautiful face that had no indication of masculinity. This certainly triggered the Monster King. Irritated, he proudly said, the procedure is too complex for my men who are only trained to fight. These things are only meant for weak people. Embarrassed by his lack of accomplishment in the array formation, he needed something else to prove his worth. If you don't believe me, we can fight right now, he firmly suggested. Gushijio was here in time to witness the Monster King's absurdity in prioritizing his reputation over the tasks at hand. If you cannot do it, just say it. Cut this nonsense and save everyone's time. Gu Shijio expressed her irritation. She decided to take over the Monster King's unfinished business. Walk away. I shall do it myself. The Monster King's failure amused the crowd. Meanwhile, their leader's face turned red with embarrassment. It seemed nothing else was more important than his reputation. He took another step closer to Di Fui and challenged. Prince Nianma, I was told that you are a strong man who has inherited most of the Divine Lord's strength. Are you up for a fight with me? I would like to see how good you are. Gu Shijio was already working on the array formation, which bought Di Fui some time for a fight. Of course, he confidently said, while moving his wrist in a circle for a quick warm-up. All she took was half an hour to finish off the Monster King's assignment swiftly and neatly. She threw a quick look at the Monster King's bruised face and asked with a voice full of pity, "Should I offer you some medicine to apply on your wounds?" In fact, the Monster King was badly beaten. Both his eyes were bruised, and he had lost both of his front teeth. His nose was no longer pointy like before. Also, one of his earlobes was missing. Di Fui managed his attacks with thorough consideration of the impact. The Monster King was not critically hurt at all, so he could still contribute his strength in the activation of the array formation later on. He only aimed his fist to the Monster King's face so that he could show his bruises to everyone. The Monster King was unable to fight back at all, as Di Fui was too fast. After a series of actions, the Monster King did not even manage to scratch Di Fui at all, no matter how much strength he had exerted. He took a hard defeat in less than 5 rounds. More pathetically, he could not even last for half an hour. Di Fui only took 8 minutes to defeat him and put him in his place. The Monster King finally realized that Di Fui did not get any help from his father to gather a troop of powerful men to work for him. He made it all by himself. Before the fight, more than half of the people there did not submit themselves under Di Fui's leadership. However, his swift victory in defeating the Monster King was a game-changer. From then on, the way he looked at everyone was with a firm assertion of authority. He had successfully gained their respect by proving his strength. Finally, Prince Niamo's leadership impressed them. His success was no longer about the Divine Lord. Di Fui did not care about what others thought of him at all. He only responded to the Monster King's challenge because he needed an opportunity to establish his power and influence over the others so that they would be united to work towards the same goal. All right, resume your work. Kuan Shui. Master, Kuan Shui suddenly showed up. Take someone with you and make a thorough check to make sure everything is in place. There should be no errors at all. Noted, Kuan Shui went swiftly away to complete his newly assigned task. The crowd began to walk away from the scene and started to feel more confident about the array formation. If Prince Nianma himself approved it, then there should be no problem at all. Every position was well marked before Di Fui made the first command to activate the array formation. Many streaks of 7-colored ray rose into the sky, like a powerful dragon that had just come alive. It surrounded the sky for a moment before colliding with the desert. No one could hear the sound of the collision between two incredibly strong forces. All they could hear was their ears ringing and their hearts thumping after the deafening collision. Unfortunately, all of their hands were too occupied to cover up their ears. Gu Shijio was with Di Fui. They were both the masterminds of the array formation, so they had to lead by example by not lifting their hands away from the respective positions. Just when the collision was about to happen, Gu's Zygius ears were suddenly secured by 2 small covers that were soundproof. Therefore, she was not affected by the deafening sound at all. It only felt like some negligible noise in the background. Fan Qianshi's proposed array formation was really effective and precise. Like a medicine with special efficacy, the frantic expansion of the desert finally came to a halt. Also, it seemed that this array formation was not as physically demanding as the previous one. The desert was no longer moving outward. Instead, it held its position and started to roll aggressively, as if defending its territory. The streaks of 7-colored rays continued to march forward and cleanse the grudge of the resentful spirits along the way. Those spirits could be heard screeching in agony. Gu Shijio was relieved by the seven-colored ray's success in holding the desert back. He really has found a way. Di Fui examined the desert and said, "It is not that simple, I believe. The demon must have prepared an alternative." Soon, the desert could be heard roaring with laughter, like the sound of a few men and women laughing in unison. "Fan Qianshi, is this your way of taking me down?" Sand and dust began to gather on the outskirts of the desert, followed by a surprise arrival of 18 ladies in white. All of them shared the same looks, appearances, and looked like a bunch of clones. Surprised, many of them turned to look at Gu Shijio in disbelief. Those ladies in white looked exactly like her. Other than their clothes and their expressions, they were completely alike. However, the ladies were surrounded by an intimidating force of dark energy, which Gu Shijio clearly did not have. Chapter 3062. The Grand Finale, 29. The group began to get nervous as what happened next was even more threatening. In a high-pitched screech, the ladies in white laughed out loud before circling their bodies to summon a black storm. The black storm contained countless evil spirits in their core, which were used to counter the streaks of seven-colored rays. In a dispersed manner, the storm tried to get rid of the seven-colored rays from all directions. All it took was an hour for the grand battle to come to an end. There were 81 array formations, respectively, and the black storm destroyed about half. Luckily, Di Fui and Gu Zijia's wizardry barrier was a timely help. Otherwise, more than half of their forces would be sacrificed. Even with their help, a dozen of immortals were still lost in the battle, taken away by the storm to join the resentful spirits. The array was falling apart, so his last and final resort was proven to be useless against the demon. Aghast with terror, Fan Qianshi fixed his eyes on the ladies in white, who were now laughing arrogantly at his failure. Furiously, he clenched his fists tightly. The demon had been anticipating his every move. Everything she did was targeted at his plans. Apparently, he had underestimated the demon's capability as a wheeler-dealer. The immortals were enraged by Fan Qianshi's failure. They rose to a clamor to express their doubts and disapprovals, especially the Monster King. He had never approved of the pretty boy who had suggested this plan. Now that it failed, he and his men took the chance to insult Fan Qianshi. Their words were cruel and hurtful. Huayan was standing not too far away. Triggered by the awful comments, she wanted to give a Monster King a hard slap on the face. Fan Qianshi saw it coming and cast a spell on her to put her body in a frozen state. Shocked, she looked at Fan Qianshi in astonishment. The man said to her, "Are you an idiot? I have already told you so many times that my business is none of your business anymore. I am no longer your master." He made his announcement in public for everyone to hear. Many curious eyes lingered on Huayan. Her face turned red in embarrassment as she struggled to take a step back. She stammered in her defense. Longsai could not take the harassment anymore. He stood up for her. "Fan Qianshi, she is doing it for you." "I do not need it," Fan Qianshi icily said. "She is only a tool that is no longer useful to me. Why should she interfere with my business anymore?" Longsai was clearly annoyed by his lack of compassion. The muscle became enraged, as well as it was very against bullying, especially against women. It opened its shells and was ready to scold Fan Qianshi for his unacceptably bad behavior. Surprisingly, Gu Shijio was the one who held it back. "Master," it was perplexed by her decision. "Master, I know that you never liked Wu Wuyan as a person. She has done many terrible and awful things to you, but Fan Qianshi's behavior is totally unacceptable. Wu Wuyan has been so loyal to him, and yet this is how terribly she is mistreated in return." It sent a directed audio to Gu Shijio. "Fan Qianshi is trying to help her," Gu Shijio calmly replied via directed audio. Fan Qianshi has committed far too many unforgivable sins. Destroying the ferocious desert is a matter of the utmost importance, so he is safe for now. Once the desert is destroyed, they will surely put him to justice. Troubles will keep coming for him, for sure." If Wu Yin still insists on being his loyal follower, she will be troubled just the same, Gu Shizhou explained. The muscle did not understand the logic in Fan Qianqi's effort, but it decided not to commit any impulsive act. Human beings are so complicated. I can never understand your species. Quietly, it observed the people around and realized that Gu Shizhou was right. When Hua Yin declared herself as Fan Qianqi's follower, many immortals from the Celestial Kingdom immediately kept a distance from her. Everyone had their guard up, except Long Sai. Fan Qianqi's public humiliation managed to change everyone's attitude towards Hua Yin. In fact, many started to feel protective of her. Hua Yin had never committed any crimes during her time in the upper bound. Instead, she had saved many lives, which made her a well-respected figure. The way Fan Qianshi treated her was obviously repulsive and more like a stranger than a follower. She must have done many things against Fan Qianqi's direct orders. Otherwise, he would not be humiliating her in front of everyone. At least, that was what everybody thought. Soon, they began to sympathize with Hua Yan's predicament instead. Surely, there was no time to waste on this trivial matter, for the demon was already summoning her second wave of attack. The first wave was like a test for the demon to find out the strengths and weaknesses of the array formation. Meanwhile, the second wave was much stronger and fiercer. It flurried through the array formation and shattered the entire arrangement. After a state of complete disorder and confusion, the desert finally broke free from its confinement and started expanding again with forces that were 10 times stronger than before. It went completely out of control. The immortals were all terribly defeated and could no longer care about keeping the desert under control. Like a bunch of helpless prey, they decided to run for their lives. Indulged in the chaos, the demon could not suppress her triumphant smile. Fan Qianshi, did you really think that you could defeat me? You have brought me into this purgatory and turned me into an unstoppable disaster that will eventually consume the 6 worlds. You plan to keep Di Fui imprisoned with my help, but you also plan to sacrifice me at the end of your heroic act. Do you still want to rule the 6 worlds? I am here to tell you that you do not stand a chance. The demon intended to damage Fan Qianqi's reputation by revealing his sins. The immortals clearly heard everything that the demon said and finally understood what Fan Qianshi had been up to. Frustrated, they never thought that the well-respected creation deity would commit such crimes. However, there was no time for blaming. There was a major city about a few hundred miles away. All it took for the frantic sandstorm was a few minutes to approach the city. It would soon engulf the entire place. Most of the inhabitants were still trapped in the city when the storm came into sight. They cried out loud with the dawning recognition that their deaths were indeed inevitable. The immortals could only watch helplessly as the violent storms approached the city. Hundreds of thousands of lives would surely be swallowed. They were greatly saddened, but helpless about their misfortune. With a feeling of great distress, the Emperor Immortal finally acknowledged their defeat. The disaster was certain to happen. Not even the creation deity could undo the harm. Furthermore, both the Divine Lord and the Great Devil were absent. Perhaps their presence would shed some hopeful light in their time of misery. He took a quick look at Di Fui. The boy was still a boy, in his opinion. He was still Shun Nianma, the son of the celestial being and Great Devil. Although his kung fu was exceedingly powerful, he was only a boy. The Emperor Immortal did really expect Di Fui to turn the situation around. All he hoped for was the boy's safety. But what he saw was not what he had in his mind. Utterly shocked, he could not comprehend the event that was going to unfold. Di Fui refused to run. He was still floating in the air and peacefully meditating. His wife, Gu Shizhou, continued to stand by his side when the black storm swallowed them both. Absolutely worried, the Emperor Immortal forgot how dangerous it was and was about to rush forward to help. Prince Nianma was the only son of the Divine Lord and Great Devil. The Emperor Immortal felt that he was responsible if anything were to happen to him. Nevertheless, the Emperor Immortal's escorts were loyal. They would definitely not let their king sacrifice his life in vain. Your Majesty, it is too dangerous. No, Many of them were pulling him back. "Get Prince Niema out of there!" The Emperor Immortal called out in desperation. The Immortals looked at the rolls of black sands hopelessly and sighed. "Your Majesty, Prince Niema has been swallowed by the sandstorm. He probably did not make it." These black sands continued to march towards the city's gate. The barricades would definitely be crushed under the savagely fierce storms, and the city's defense mechanism would not stand a chance against the violent disturbance. The Emperor Immortal closed his eyes to avoid watching the depressing sight. Only a miracle could save the lives of those innocent people. A moment later, his surroundings fell into a drop-dead silence. There was no screaming for help as he had expected, as the storm of black sand came to a halt. His breathing was the only sound that he could hear. Curiously, the Emperor Immortal quickly opened his eyes and saw something unforgettable. The rolls of black sands had simply come to a stop when in contact with a seven-colored wizardry barrier. The barrier was connected from the ground all the way into the sky. Though thin, it was powerful enough to put the violent storm to a stop. In a loud, squealing sound, the resentful spirits tried to break the barrier, but the seven-colored wizardry barrier remained unaffected at all. On the high end of the wizardry barrier stood a man. His purple robes were as dazzling as the sun, filling the sky with blinding streaks of light. Auspiciously, the man stood in a halo that clearly represented his divine powers. They could not see his face, but could certainly feel his powerful, auspicious aura. The Emperor Immortal kneeled before him in the clouds, and everyone else did the same and bowed to the powerful man. Shocked, even the common people joined in and bowed to the man of divine powers. The Monster King caught the sight of the man while he was running away. The man's face was not clearly shown, but his power as a deity was unmistakable. His legs went jelly, and he almost lost his balance as he kneeled before the man of great power and influence. It is the master of the heavenly law. It is the master of the heavenly law. Not many had seen the man before, but they just knew it as soon as they saw his halo of divinity. The Emperor Immortal took a while to recognize the man in the dazzling light. Of course, the sudden realization came as a shocking one. He could tell that the man was in fact Prince Nienma, but he could no longer look at him the same way. The man had the same appearance as Prince Nienma, but his aura was totally different. As the master of the heavenly law, he was given the absolute power to govern the life and death of all beings. Basically, he was omnipotent and benevolent. There he stood, gracefully. A simple spell was enough for him to summon a wizardry barrier and shelter all the living beings in the city from the unfair torment. In a halt, the rolling black storms were kept out of reach. Utterly shocked, the Monster King gasped in disbelief. Never had he thought that the pretty boy that he disdained would turn out to be the master of the heavenly law. It seemed he finally awoke to his true self. The Monster King still could not believe that he just had a fight with the master of the heavenly law. He was quite ashamed of his bruises, but now the defeat was more of an honor than an embarrassment. The master of the heavenly law's powerful presence gave everyone a new sense of hope. The legendary man showed up unexpectedly in times when he was needed the most. The crowd now felt that the demonic lady in the desert was hardly his match. Many curious eyes turned to the desert while waiting for the lady to show up. Meanwhile, Fan Qianshi stood in the corner and looked at Di Fui with a dampened spirit. He never thought that Di Fui would be restored to his position so soon. He looked at Gu Shizhou fixedly, who was now standing next to Di Fui. In the halo, they stood by each other side by side. Even without regaining her power as the creation deity, her divinity was present. They looked perfectly matched for one another. The core of the desert was still actively generating power, but there was no way for it to move forward, for the wizardry barrier had totally got in its way. Soon, a dozen more ladies in white showed up at the very edge of the frantic desert. They looked the same as before. The look in their eyes was vicious and deadly as they continued to stare at the two divine figures that had clearly interrupted their business. Chapter 3063. The grand finale, 30, dozen of vicious eyes continue to linger on them, but Gushijio remained nonchalant. The group of demonic ladies then fixed their eyes on Di Fui and softly said, Fui, I did not know that you were the master of the heavenly law. Fan Qianshi never mentioned a word about it. Oddly, only one voice was heard, even though all of them were talking. The hidden bitterness in her voice echoed in everyone's ears. About 100 volunteers showed up. More than half were men. Although they had seen many beautiful women before, the lattice charm remained irresistible. Her voice still managed to play tricks on their minds and misled them with an overwhelming sentiment to sympathize with her. Only Di Fui remained calm. His fingers moved in swift motions to start gathering 7 colored rays on his palm. Fui, now that you have awakened to your hidden identity, I assume that you have also recalled your memory. You should be guilty of breaking up our relationship as master and disciple. My immortalization would not have come so soon if you had not been so stubborn. The lady in white stared at him tearfully and continued. Are you going to hurt me again? She expressed her bitterness over what Di Fui had done. Misled by her psychological tricks, many sympathized with her difficult situation. Something had clearly gone terribly wrong at this point. These men had experienced many different tricks in their lives, both physiologically and strategically. They knew that their mood was not stable, but they could not control the sympathy that they had for the lattice sufferings. The ladies started to cry, which prompted some of the men to cry along as well. Those with weaker mental strength could not escape their fate of being manipulated. Uncontrollably, they began interceding with Di Fui on the lattice behalf. Di Fui looked at the ladies fixedly, feigning indifference. The 7-colored ray in his palm seemed to have grown weaker. At that time, the group of ladies took a chance and stepped forward. Fui, are you going to let history repeat itself? Are you going to kill me once more? Although quiet at first, Di Fui finally answered, I am not going to kill you just once. This was the first statement that he made as the master of the heavenly law. Instead of sounding threatening, he spoke in Avery's soft-spoken and courteous manner. Gu Zijia's heart skipped a beat when she heard him speaking with such a gentle, quiet voice. Fui, I knew it. The ladies responded delightfully. To their disappointment, a dozen streaks of 7-colored rays were abruptly launched at the ladies, all at once. It was an improvised attack that the ladies did not see coming. Meanwhile, Di Fui's firm voice could be heard echoing in the air. I'm going to kill you a dozen times. The dazzling streaks of light surrounded the ladies in a brilliant bubble. They started shrieking in agony almost instantaneously. Instead of sounding like a woman, their long, high-pitched cries were actually a combination of sounds from many different men and women. The deafening noise came as a wake-up call for all the immortals that were initially manipulated. As soon as the 7-colored light faded away, the group of ladies disappeared as well. Nevertheless, the shrieks from before had sent cold chills down everyone's spine. Finally, they were fully conscious. Di Fui did not stop. With a spell, he turned streaks of 7-colored rays into countless shinning knives. With his instruction, the knives seemed to cut their way deep into the depths of the desert. The crowd noticed that the violent storm began to lose its power, as if the penetrating knives had punctured it. Di Fui, you are such a callous man. A lady could be heard screaming from within the desert with a voice filled with both bitterness and anger. I have always been insensitive and cruel. Haven't you known? Di Fui immediately cast another spell. Don't bother taking up more forms of your same old self. No matter how many show up, I will destroy them all. He then waved at the turbulent storms and tore the desert apart, revealing the resentful spirits within that were moving violently in a circular motion. Everyone could finally see what the desert actually looked like from the inside. It was all but a horrifying sight. They had never seen so many resentful spirits at once. The presence of the spirits caused the surrounding temperature to drop sharply, thus freezing everything and everyone who was standing in close proximity. Therefore, the immortals quickly cast a protective layer to keep the cold away. Right after the layer was made, it was instantaneously turned into ice, showing how close they were to become an ice sculpture. Before the desert was torn apart to reveal what was inside, the whole place was as hot as a frying pan. In fact, the heat was unbearable. But now, it was so cold that even the immortals kept shivering. It was not the kind of cold that they had experienced during the winter. The temperature here was piercing cold to the point where even the Monster King had to take out a big fur coat to keep himself warm. Everyone else did the same. Unfortunately, the mussel shells were not enough to keep the cold away. Cold. So cold, it said in a trembling voice. A thick coat was sent over to the mussel to wrap it up comfortably, and soon enough, the mussel was no longer feeling cold. It raised its head from the coat, only to realize that Gu Shijio and Di Fui were both gone. Master! It was puzzled and worried. Longsai explained, "Don't worry. She is now in the desert, along with the master of the heavenly law. We just escaped from the desert, right? Are they heading back in?" The mussel could not believe it. Longsai sighed. "This time, we have the master of the heavenly law with us." In the desert, the crazy heat was long gone. It was more like a desolate area of ice. The turbulent sands were all frozen into odd shapes and sizes. The air was piercing cold, as if every droplet of water vapor in the air was already turned into tiny bits of ice. Nevertheless, the spirits were still out to haunt them. Everywhere they looked was filled with eerie and ghostly figures. It was a rather appalling sight. These ghosts traveled at inconsistent paces and hid among the ice statue while waiting for an opportunity to ambush their prey. Overall, it was a very strange and frightening place. Gu Shijio could tell that the extreme cold was enough to pierce through any ordinary person's flesh and bones, but she was unaffected, for there was a steady flow of heat circulating in her body. Di Fui took her hand in a steady grasp and transferred some heat in her body to keep her warm even at the extremely low temperature of the place. The two had not interacted much ever since he recalled his identity. Gu Shijio was only standing next to him, but he never even looked at her. He did not even utter a word despite their new surrounding. To be fair, there was no time for small talk, so Gu Shijio did not blame Di Fui for their lack of interaction. Nonetheless, she could tell that he was no longer the same man. Although he still looked the same, his aura and temperament had completely changed. Standing next to him made her feel insignificant. Naturally, she could feel the distance between them. Before he went into the desert, he finally talked to her for the first time. "Wait for me here," he said. He then leaped and disappeared into the storms. However, instead of waiting, Gu Shijio chose to follow him. There was nothing much to deal with on the outside of the desert, so she wanted to stay by his side, even in times of great danger. She knew that the demon was not going to be easy to deal with. The desert was unexpectedly cold to the point where she almost became frozen. Luckily, Di Fui showed up in time to give her warmth. "Why didn't you listen to me?" He sounded a little helpless about her stubbornness. At least, the way he spoke to her was still the same. "I was worried about your safety since you were in the desert alone," Gu Shijio replied calmly. She did not want Di Fui to perish together with the demon and refused to see him getting immortalized again. The wait was too long for her to take. She needed to follow him and make sure that he stayed safe. Even if she could not help during the battle, she could at least fight with him or die together with him. Di Fui could tell how worried she was and tried to assure her. "No worries." He gave her hand a tight squeeze. She had yet to find out how powerful he had become, so it was normal for her to feel worried. The airflow in the desert was as rough as the violent seas. The two shuddered a little as soon as they entered the turbulence, but they continued to walk past the masses of resentful spirits. From afar, they looked like they were traveling on a small boat that was holding out against strong winds. Nevertheless, the intense gusts of wind seemed to be about to overturn their boat any time. As steady as he could ever be, Di Fui stood up against the gusts without the slightest doubt. The resentful spirits were actually intimidated by his holy presence, so all of them kept a fair distance from him. "Come out." Di Fui had a spell ready at his fingertips before he challenged the demon. "There is no way you can hide." No one answered, and all they could hear were the piercing cries of the evil spirits. Many pairs of vicious eyes were staring fixedly at Gu Shijio, making her skin creep with horror and disgust. Needless to say, the demon must be hiding in a group of resentful spirits while waiting for a chance to launch a deadly attack. Amused by her lack of response, Di Fui smiled a charming smile and continued, "All right, I shall look for you then." From a distance, he waved his hand and aimed a streak of 7-colored rays towards an ice rock. A loud squealing sound followed the collision. Instantaneously, the lady in white finally made her appearance. She made a graceful landing, even though her eyes were fixed on Di Fui. "Fui, are you really pushing me to the edge?" she said in a trembling voice, as if pleading for mercy. Unconvinced, Di Fui slowly answered, "Certainly. Why should I have any mercy for you?" "Fui, have you not recovered your memory? You wanted to marry me back then." Di Fui denied it. "Did I want to marry you? Are you sure you are not dreaming?" The lady in white made a sharp hissing sound of disapproval. Gu Shijio was quite surprised by Di Fui's response as well. She started to think that he might not have recalled all of his memory yet, even though he had become the man he once was. While she was still a bit preoccupied, she could feel a strong rush of wind coming at her. Apparently, the place was literally a mess of endless turbulences. All of a sudden, she felt a gust of wind surrounding her. She used a simple spell to try and keep the gust away, but to her surprise, Di Fui suddenly interrupted and pulled her back. He then reached out to trap the gust in a bubble of 7-colored ray, like an enclosure. At that very moment, the sound of a lady moaning in despair could be heard. It did not take long before the lady in white showed up again. Everything happened too quickly to be perceived. In disbelief, Gu Shijio took a look at the two identical ladies. She then pointed at the one that showed up later and said, "You are the demon." The lady who showed up later seemed puzzled. "How did you find out?" She demanded an answer. The lady who showed up first was only one of the many forms that she had created by manipulating a resentful spirit that looked similar to her. For many years, the demon had been using that particular spirit to confuse people. No one had ever told them apart because they looked almost alike. This time, the demon asked the spirit to show up first to distract Di Fui so that she could transform into a gust of wind and approach Gu Shijio sneakily in an attempt to steal her body. Never had she thought that Di Fui would bust her plan. Di Fui's 7-colored ray had obviously injured the demon. Blood was seen slowly tracing down her chin from the corner of her mouth. "Di Fui, you are such a heartless man," she said while trembling with terror. Soon, the look in her eyes started to fill with rage. "Have you really forgotten it all?" Di Fui remained indifferent to her emotional appeal. "I remember, but you are not the one," he firmly replied. His hand never let go of Gu Zijia's hand. "She is the one, but she does not remember you. A part of her was in love with you, but she forcefully tore it apart from her body, which explains the origin of my very existence. She does not remember loving you, but I do. I have been waiting for you to come," the demon exclaimed. Her emotions were visible and heartfelt. Unconvinced, Di Fui studied the lady in white before giving her a clear sign of disapproval. "So, what if you remember everything? You are not who she is. You are just a small part of her that used to be her demon. You do not even have her soul. Your appearance now is actually a mixture of 18 different spirits that are forged into one. Did you really think that I would never find out?" The lady in white was speechless. Di Fui gave his sleeve a flick and continued, "Stop this nonsense. Show me what you can do. I would like to see how powerful you really are." Gu Shijio was standing on top of a block of ice while surrounded by a layer of auspicious light. The halo around her was recently gifted to her by Di Fui to keep the evil spirits and the demon away from her. She watched as Di Fui and the lady started engaging in a fight, and after a few rounds, she could finally be at ease. Ever since Di Fui became the master of the heavenly law, his power had been increased by at least 100 times. His improvement was so impressive that it was as if comparing the volume of a river to that of an ocean. In short, his power was now as tremendous as an ocean. The demon had no chance of defeating him at all. She would surely lose the fight, sooner or later. Difui stood casually and only moved his fingers. Instead of engaging in a physical battle, he only used spells in his combat. It was as carefree as a game of chess to the man. Glimpses of seven-colored rays turned into many starlights that surrounded the demon within a walled enclosure. There was no chance for her to even run, and the demon clearly started to regret her decision. Even with all of her power, she still could not defend herself against Difui's aggressive attack. Every time the light particles hit her body, she felt as if her soul was tearing apart, which put her in excruciating pain. Regardless of her tactics, he remained unharmed. He was literally unaffected at all. She, too, came to an inescapable conclusion that she was losing the fight, slowly but surely. Even though she wanted to escape, there was nowhere that she could run to because of the light particles used by Difui. These light particles were engraved with ancient incantations, so every time a particle hit her, it would leave a blood stain on her body, which would eventually turn black and fade into wisps of black smoke. The fight did not last longer than an hour, and Difui finally stopped attacking her. The demon could no longer hold her own. She was soaked entirely in blood, as if she had just been scooped out of a pool of blood. Her body was already scalded and skinned, turning her into a faint, nebulous image that flickered in the wind. The woman looked so fragile that it seemed as though she would be blown away even by the slightest gust of wind. Her face was starting to look blurry, and she appeared to be in her primitive form, the ghost of the former god of creation's unfulfilled dreams. Chapter 3064. The Grand Finale, 31. How is this even possible? She murmured in disbelief while her evil aura slowly faded away. Your level of kung fu is spectacular. I finally know why it took Fan Qianshi thousands of years to plot against you, but there is something I still do not quite understand. Back then, your kung fu was not this powerful at all. Difui replied. When I first encountered her, I had not fully regained my strength. Her? It was me. The demon answered with a squeal of disapproval. No, you have never been the girl I met. Difui emphasized once more. Fan Qianshi placed her memory forcibly into your head in order to increase your grudge against Gu Shijio. He intended to strengthen your hostility. The demon was perplexed, for what she thought was hers turned out to be someone else's. Even her memories belonged to someone else. Did anything even belong to her? Her body started swaying as if caught in a daze. Meanwhile, glimpses of light started to escape from Difui's hands. The demon sensed the danger and immediately turned to look at him and asked, "What are you going to do to me?" "Send you back where you belong," Difui answered calmly. Then, flashes of seven-colored rays slipped through Difui's fingers and encapsulated the demon in a blinding circle of light. The demon was never supposed to exist. She was a result of many irresponsible choices. She shared the same appearance as Gu Shijio, but her character was completely different. Difui had no reason to keep the demon alive. Furthermore, if she lived on, the trapped spirits in the abyss of grudge and misery would never be cleansed. Nevertheless, Difui did not seem heartless after all. He made sure that her suffering was minimal, for she used to be Gu Zhijia's unspoken obsession once upon a time. The demon, on the other hand, was reluctant to be cleansed. She continued to struggle against the bubble of light, but could not set herself free. She suddenly raised her voice and challenged Gu Shijio. "Seems like he doesn't love you at all. Look at the cruelty that he is putting me through. I used to be a part of you. As the master of the heavenly law, he has to be compassionate to all, not passionate to only one. Now that he has regained his identity, he will no longer love you the same. He will not love you anymore." Gu Shijio said nothing back. With a frown, Difui clenched his fingers to strengthen his seven-colored ray, causing the demon to screech with pain. "Difui, you will regret this. You will regret killing me off." It did not take long before she disappeared entirely in the light and turned into dust. Then, the surrounding spirits stopped squealing for a while. They were thoroughly intimidated by Difui's superior aura as a deity and fell into a brief moment of silence. Difui looked at Gu Shijio, who was standing not too far away from him. She seemed absorbed in her thoughts while staring blankly at the spot where the demon was last seen. He decided to ask her to come over. "Come to me." It was normal for her to keep her distance from him when he was busy dealing with the demon. But now that the problem was no longer a concern, why didn't she get closer? Was she affected by what the demon said? Difui decided to walk to her and place his hand on her waist. He softly said, "Are you mad at me?" She had nothing to do with you at all. Killing her off certainly does not mean I do not love you. I do not think this is over yet. Gu Shijio finally broke her silence. The demon would not give up so easily, for sure. I have a feeling that she must have left some evil doings behind. What she said did not sound like a simple threat. Gu Shijio made her guess while absent-mindedly tapping on the block of ice. Difui was caught off guard by her unexpected response. She had clearly overthought the whole situation. During his time in the lower bound, he found a way that would allow him to regain his status as the master of the heavenly law, but he could not do it. There could only be one master of the heavenly law, so his return would put his son's existence to an end. When Dihao disappeared, Difui's memory of him disappeared too. However, something still lingered in Difui's subconscious mind, telling him not to reinstate his status or something important might never return. He would not do it unless it were absolutely necessary. As soon as he was restored to his former self, memories started to flood into his head. Being the master of the heavenly law allowed him to experience what he had gained over many lives, thus filling him with countless fragments of memories. Due to his longevity, those fragments flowed back to him like a massive tide. When he first recalled his former identity, he had to suffer from an inflow of memory every time he returned to the lower bound. There were just too many fragments of memory for him to absorb all at once. Every time the recovery happened, he needed to take a break before he could put those fragments into a proper timeline. However, there was no time for him to react this time when the demon remained as his greatest threat. Even in a state of stunned confusion, he knew that he needed to stop the demon from causing more harm, which was why he was a little distant from Gu Shijio at first. She was still the person that he cared for the most, so he needed to make sure that she was safe by asking her to steer clear from the desert. Nevertheless, after the long of battling with the demon, he recovered almost all of his memories. In conclusion, he still cared about her the most, now and in the past. Perhaps he had unlocked some prohibitions in the forbidden land of God, because he had not only recovered his memories as the master of the heavenly law, but had also uncovered some of his entanglements with the former God of creation. He remembered many things, even in their former life. 2 lives ago, he went against destiny and became immortalized for her. 1 life ago, she became immortalized earlier because of him. No matter who immortalized for who, the unbearable pain of loss remained the same. It was not the kind of pain that he would like to go through again. There should not be any misunderstandings this time, unlike in the past. When he was finally done with the demon, the next thing that he wanted to do was to explain everything to Gu Shijio, but she seemed to be unaffected by what the demon said. She remained absolutely calm. Did she trust him wholeheartedly, or did she care less about him already? The demon was gone, but the masses of resentful spirits remained as a terrible problem. Even as the master of the heavenly law, cleansing them all at once remained outside of his power. He was the master of the heavenly law who maintained law and order, not the God of creation who blessed the souls of the 6 realms. Fortunately, the resentful spirits were intimidated by his power and did not dare to make any moves at the moment. Nevertheless, intimidation could not keep them down forever. Once they break free from the desert, the consequences would be unimaginably deadly. What are we going to do with these resentful spirits? Gu Shijio was very troubled by the sight of them. Maybe Fan Qianshi knows a solution. Difui then grasped her by the wrist and said, "The yin element of this place is too strong for you. Let's talk outside." Outside, the frantic expansion of the desert finally came to a halt. The leaders of all 6 kingdoms reunited to discuss a proper solution that could put an end to the desert. The desert had expanded to almost a third of the entire continent. Additionally, the enormous presence of resentful spirits had brought the temperature of the desert down to almost zero. Cold winds from within the desert swept through its surroundings like a harsh winter, freezing the cities under a layer of thick ice. Meanwhile, the cold winds continued to spread, turning the place into a Siberia of sorts with extreme cold. The cold winds were nothing ordinary. They were winds of the En element, which were harmful and sometimes even lethal. Therefore, the desert had to be destroyed. In order to destroy the desert, they must first get rid of the millions of spirits, but there was no way they could cleanse the spirits' resentments at once. Not even the Emperor Immortal could do so. Impatiently, the Monster King proposed, "If we cannot cleanse them all at once, let's take it slowly then. There are so many of us here. Each of us can take care of hundreds of spirits a day. We can put an end to it slowly, but surely." But someone in the crowd disagreed. It is not that simple. The spirit's resentment grows stronger with each passing day. They are already affecting the climate of the entire continent. Ordinary people cannot possibly cope with such extreme changes. If we leave the spirits untreated, a great plague will come raging in less than 3 days. Even if we give up on cleansing these spirits, fighting them one by one is not a wise option either. There are just too many of them. It will be a waste of energy. That is right. They cannot be purified or destroyed. These spirits are truly problematic. I have an idea. We can enclose these spirits in the desert before we seal off the place for good, someone suggested. You make it sound so easy. How do you plan to seal off the enormous desert for good? Kindly enlighten me. It is not me that will do it, of course, but the master of the heavenly law should be able to do it. As soon as they mentioned Di Fui, many hopeful eyes turned to look at him. He still looked unapproachable and stood silently about 50 feet away from everyone. No one dared to stand too close to him, except for Gushijio. His appearance had not changed much, but he was clearly no longer Shin Yinma. Their eyes lingered on him, as if he was the invincible leader that they desperately needed. In order to put an end to this, we must channel the spirits elsewhere. Sealing them off in the desert is not the solution. In time, they will break free and rise as an even greater disaster. No one knew how the spirits could be channeled, so everyone seemed perplexed. In the midst of confusion, Di Fui finally gave his attention to Fan Qianshi, who had been unusually quiet the whole time. Maybe he knows a way. After Di Fui recovered his identity as the master of the heavenly law, Fan Qianshi started behaving despondently, as if he was battered out of his senses. He did not make any fuss or any trouble, however. He just stayed quiet. Di Fui's comment reminded the group of Fan Qianshi's presence, thus drawing their attention back to him. They all looked at him with a feeling of revulsion. After all, he was the root of all these problems. Frustrated, they would have to reprimand him for his acts of foolishness if he were not the god of creation. They did not voice out their disapproval verbally, but the look in their eyes said it all. Fan Qianshi was indifferent to their comments and stares. He was standing right there in a group of people, but never took part in any discussions. His gaze never left the desert, even when Di Fui called his name out loud. With his eyes still fixed on the danger, he slowly said, "This ferocious desert cannot be put away using any spells. The same goes for these resentful spirits. Any common practices cannot cleanse them. There's only one way to get rid of the desert, which is to open the Pajuo gate and lead the spirits across the gate." The red lotus fire beyond Pajuo gate has the ability to cleanse their resentment and grudge. In 1,000 years, they will be able to reincarnate. Chapter 3065. The Grand Finale. 32. Perplexed. None of them knew anything about the existence of such a gate, except for Di Fui and the Emperor Immortal. However, the Emperor Immortal only knew very little about it. He remembered reading about the gate in a very ancient book, which stated that the Pajuo gate was a gate of purification that was established by the creation deity as an act of compassion. It was created as an independent space for cleansing and purification. That was all he knew. He did not even know how the gate worked. You are the only one who can open the gate, right? The Emperor Immortal was rather straightforward with Fan Qianshi. Fan Qianshi answered nonchalantly, I'm incapable of opening the gate. It was a surprising piece of information to the crowd. I know that the creation deity first established the Pajuo gate, and that only the creation deity can open it. Since you address yourself as the creation deity, I see no reason why you are incapable of opening the gate, the Emperor Immortal argued. Fan Qianshi took a look at his own hands before laughing out loud. The Pusuo gate is the ultimate symbol of kindness and compassion, so one must have the purest intention in order to open the gate. I have committed unforgivable sins, and many people have died because of me. Why should you be surprised by my incapability of opening the gate? Everyone was aghast at his brutal honesty. They had never seen any deity with such audacity to be so upright about his own sins. Was the arrogant creation deity finally reaping what he sowed? Meanwhile, the Emperor Immortal continued. You worked with the demon to create the desert. You said that everything you did was to get the 6 worlds to bow before your superiority by destroying the desert that you created in the first place. You proposed that the Pusuo gate was the only way to cleanse the spirits, and yet you also admitted that you were incapable of opening the gate. How did you plan to destroy the desert in the first place? Plans change all the time. What's the point of talking about my initial plan? Fan Qianshi said nonchalantly. When he first made the plan with the demon, he never wanted to kill the demon. In order to gain her trust, he had to place a special spell within the structure of the ferocious desert. As long as the demon was alive, these spirits would merely be filled with resentment and grudge. They would not be infected by the demon's ancient evil aura. When all of his plans finally succeeded, he would then take the time to cleanse the spirits by using an ordinary purification method. At least he was confident that they could be contained. However, because the demon was destroyed, her ancient evil aura was widespread to every corner of the desert, thus infecting every resentful spirit with the evilest form of ancient powers and preventing them from being cleansed. Opening the Pusuo gate remained the most effective way. Fan Qianshi had committed unforgivable sins, so there was no way he could open the Pusuo gate, which was why the demon agreed to work with him. Back in the present, Fan Qianshi continued to speak in an arrogant and opinionated manner. His truculent and uncooperative behavior was especially repulsive. Nevertheless, his aura remained unquestionably powerful. Otherwise, he would have been beaten up by the group of people that were offended by his attitude. Even though they did not beat him up physically, they did not hold back on their articulate assault on all the sins that he had committed. They were fearless, for Di Fui was there to protect them. Among the crowd were also those that refused to join the assault. They only distanced themselves from him. Fan Qianshi stood alone on a rock, with no one around to stand by him. He seemed rather secluded. Perplexed, the group of people had only one question in mind. Why would a creation deity commit such great sins? Someone asked if Fan Qianshi regretted any of his decisions, but he acted as if none of the accusations mattered and even had the audacity to laugh out loud. He never felt obligated to answer anyone's questions about his decisions. Also, no amount of remorse and shame could turn the situation around. At that point, he looked at Gu Shijie with a weak smile and said, Master, there is only one thing that I regret. Even without any memories from her past, Gu Shijie still acknowledged him as a disciple that she once had. What is the matter? She gave him a rather confused look. You used to care deeply about me. With a bitter smile, he hoarsely continued, It is a shame that you no longer remember me or the connection that we used to share. What? Gu Shijie felt as though her heart was stabbed. Fan Qianshi continued to laugh out loud with derision. Master, how I wish you were still the same. I'm the one who started the mess, so I should be the one to end it. However, this is not something that I can accomplish alone, so please finish it off for me. Gu Zijie's heart sank. You. Fan Qianshi started walking towards the desert, and everyone else was shocked. Gu Shijio knew that something bad was about to happen. Fan Qianshi, what are you trying to do? Fan Qianshi said nothing back. He continued to walk towards the desert with effortless grace, and with every step, crimson-red lotuses blossomed beneath his feet. As soon as these lotuses were in full bloom, they rose into the air and danced lightly in the gusts. Instantly, he became surrounded by blood-red petals. These petals in the air served as a trigger for the resentful spirits. Almost instantaneously, the masses of spirits were drawn towards Fan Qianshi in heavy circles. Needless to say, Hua Yin panicked. The wizardry barrier that shielded the desert was transparent, allowing her to see everything that happened in there. The red petals were actually extractions of Fan Qianshi's very own blood. His blood attracted the resentful spirits, prompting them to bite and tear his flesh apart. However, the man did not defend himself or run away. He just stood and allowed the spirit to consume his body, turning his body into glimpses of red light. It was an obvious suicide. Gu Shijio clenched her fists in disbelief. She utterly disliked the man, so much so that she wished for his death. Even the fact that he used to be her disciple did not minimize the murderous hatred that she had for the wicked man. However, seeing him getting torn apart by the masses of resentful spirits was not the ending that she had hoped for him now. She took a step forward in an attempt to help, but was immediately stopped by Di Fui. He is using the red lotus disintegration dharma. Once started, it can no longer be stopped. Di Fui discouraged her. What will happen to him? He is the one responsible for the development of the desert. So naturally, these spirits hold the strongest grudge against him. He is feeding his body to the spirits in order to minimize their resentment. Master, Hua Yin called out loud. She took a leap and rushed into the desert as well. Long Sai failed to stop her and watched helplessly as she rushed to her death. Shocked, Long Sai felt the need to go after her, but the Emperor Immortal held him back. Don't be reckless. Swiftly, Hua Yin leaped towards Fan Qianshi, but he was no more than a skeleton in the end. Master, she hugged him tightly, with no regard for her safety. The resentful spirits were annoyed by her sudden interference. With a screech, they were determined to sink their teeth into her flesh and pull her out of their way. Fortunately, Fan Qianshi was still conscious, so he gave Hua Yin a hard push to keep her away. Get out of here! Hua Yin rolled across the ground for at least 100 feet. She struggled to stand up, but managed to witness Fan Qianshi's final moments. His body exploded into flashes of red light that brightened up the entire sky, which soon turned into drops of blood that rained over the entire desert, staining every spirit with his blood. Helplessly, Hua Yin stood in a daze while being soaked in his blood. Fan Qianshi was gone forever. There was no sign of him anywhere, and it felt like he never existed. Everyone else stood looking at one another in helpless confusion. Did he just make a sacrifice to atone for the sins? What about his soul? Where did it go? His soul must have escaped. The mere sacrifice of his physical body means nothing to a mighty creation deity like him. That is right. People started to discuss his act of sacrifice. No. His soul was shattered as well. Di Fui made a loud announcement to cease the gossip. Gu Zijia's face turned pale at once while the rest finally kept their mouths shut. They fixed their curious eyes on the desert and watched the blood rain pour down. It did not take long for the rain to stop. They could finally see the spirits again and also caught a glimpse of Hua Yin, who was paralyzed in shock. Perhaps she had a natural defense against the spirits, or Fan Qianshi had cast a spell to protect her. The spirits surrounded her heavily, but could never get close enough to harm her. Mighty, immortal Hua Yin, please step out of the desert. Long Sai was still recovering from the shock of witnessing Fan Qianshi explode into bits. He, too, froze in horror. Hua Yin seemed disheartened by the loss of her master. Soon, she started scorning her survival. She swayed to her feet, but fell to the ground again and again. With a handful of sand filled with Fan Qianshi's blood, she murmured to herself, Master, you are the one I loved. You have always been the only one. Let me come with you. Glimpses of white light started to form on her palm, before she pointed her palm to the top of her head. Master Huayan, Longside desperately called out loud, but her body was soon covered in a blinding white light before it disappeared. Longside knelt on the ground in disbelief. He did not have any affection towards Huayan as a man, but he truly respected her as his master. He never imagined that Hua Yin would kill herself for Fan Qianshi. Dazed by her death, there were no tears left for him to cry. As for the others, they were equally stunned by her sudden and tragic death. None of them uttered another word. The one responsible for all this is now dead. But what about the desert? Who else here can open the Puso gate? Finally, someone broke the silence. There were no responses, but intuitively, all of them turned to Di Fui to look for an answer. The man, too, was shocked by the next event that was about to unfold before their eyes. Di Fui did not change one bit. He stood as gracefully as always. As for Gu Shijio, she was undergoing a sudden, massive transformation. Blinding lights started to scatter from her body as though she was the sun. She sat peacefully with her eyes closed as if she had just reached a new form of enlightenment. Kuan Shui was the first one to realize the significance of her changes. She is about to be awakened. Could she be the next creation deity? A sudden realization hit the Emperor Immortal. Kuan Shui snapped his finger in agreement. That is right. The Emperor Immortal was shocked, and so was everyone else. After a while, the blinding seven-colored rays finally faded away, and Gu Shijio opened her eyes and slowly stood up. I shall be the one who opens the Pusua gate. I will finish off what he started. Gu Shijio shone in eternal light, indicating that she was a deity, a superior identity that should be respected by all. Her looks remained the same, but her aura was very different. She looked almighty. After a moment of shock, the crowd then leaped into joyful cheers of celebration for the return of the real creation deity who would bring salvation for all mankind. Gu Shiju looked away from the cheerful crowd and whispered to herself, Qianshi, I will finish it off for you. A tear rolled down a cheek and disappeared into the wind. Chapter 3066. Anecdote. Sharing Peach's Di Shiyue was a child of vivacity and high spirits. She had collected many items, mostly from Di Hao. He was her favorite person ever, which was why she liked being around him. She would always follow him around no matter where he went. He, in turn, would pamper her in every way that he possibly could. He would play with her, or sometimes even teach her kung fu. Di Shiyue was proud to have a brother who cared deeply for her, but one day, he just stopped breathing. There was no warning. He just laid lifelessly on the bed. She was very scared, feeling as if her world was tumbling down. Her parents told her that her brother was simply asleep, and they promised to do everything they could to wake him up. Because of this, her parents had to take both her and her brother's lifeless body back to the upper bound. It was a risk worth taking. They were finally back to the ninth heaven. Mist wreathed the entire Biwu Palace. It was a rather spectacular view, even better than anywhere else in the lower bound, but she was not in the mood for sightseeing. All she could think of was her brother, who was in a coma. His body was preserved in an ice coffin. As for her parents, they only gave her a few quick words before leaving hastily for their rescue mission. Her mother promised to revive her lifeless brother so that their family would be, once again, completed. After her parents left, Di Shue stayed by the ice coffin every day, even though the surrounding temperature was freezing cold. She would talk to Di Hao, hoping that he would suddenly open his eyes and stare back at her. She waited for the day when he would finally rub her head and tease her. Before she went to bed each night, she prayed for her brother's recovery, only to wake up in disappointment the next morning. Days went by, and her parents were still nowhere to be seen. Di Hao made no progress in his recovery, either. One day, Di Shiyue moved all of her toys to Di Hao's side and showed him each of them, one by one. Those were the ones that were given to her as gifts. Brother, when are you going to wake up? She asked. Tearfully, she stared at Di Hao in desperation. Brother, you promised to give me a 9-ring set as a gift when I finally learn to fly at least 500 miles on my own. Ever since Di Hao fell into a state of unconsciousness, she had never expressed her sorrow in front of him. This was the first time she broke down and started crying. Tears rolled down her cheeks and dripped onto his skin. She tried to wipe the tears away from his body, but was taken aback by the sudden changes. Di Hao's body was slowly melting away. Frantically, she hugged him tightly in her arms. Brother, brother. However, in a swift second, Di Hao's body had completely disappeared. With a stagger, Di Shiyue then fell into a trance, tried to recall what happened to the empty ice coffin, but could no longer remember who used to be there. Her heartache was the only thing that she could truly feel as she started sobbing uncontrollably. Before her parents left, Di Shiyue was handed over to someone reliable to be her caretaker. In the absence of her parents, Gu Zhanyu was now responsible to care for her. Years of cultivation finally paid off, for he had ascended and become an immortal. Gu Shijio brought the 8 mythical beings with her, leaving Gu Zhanyu behind to take care of the everything left behind. His first and foremost responsibility was to take care of Di Shiyue. Di Zuiyu's loud cries prompted Gu Zhanyu to come and check on her. What is wrong? What is the matter? Uncle! Di Shiyue rushed into his arms while sobbing continuously. Shiyue, what is the matter? Gu Zhanyu gently patted her back to comfort her. I don't know. I just feel like crying. Gu Zhanyu did not make any comment on her statement as he, too, was affected by a sudden feeling of doom and gloom. It was as if a family member of his had just passed away. He looked around and caught the ice coffin. Who used to be there in the ice coffin? He was perplexed, obviously. Di Shiyue looked at the ice coffin with her reddened eyes, but could not remember. She could somewhat remember that there used to be many toys around the ice coffin, but none of those were in sight anymore. Everyone broke into celebration and excited cheers once the desert finally collapsed under the influence of the Pusua Gate. They were grateful for being able to survive the great calamity. However, the cheers suddenly went mute when they realized that Gu Shijio and Di Fui were both missing. She had just channeled the immense power of her love and compassion in order to open the gate, thus offering a second chance for the resentful spirits in the Pusua world. Apparently, the two of them left immediately after. When Gu Shijio recalled her memory, she felt great sorrow but did not show it on her face at all. No matter how badly Fan Qianshi had sinned, he would always be the beloved disciple that she used to cherish. For decades, they used to keep each other company, and the connection that they used to share remained. No amount of time could make her forget how much she actually cared for him. After finishing off the mess that he left behind, she realized that she needed some time to be alone and sort things out within herself. Without any warning, she teleported right away. With the power of a creation deity, her teleportation skill had attained the acme of perfection. She could cover hundreds of miles each time with ease. She came across a place that was ablaze with peach blossoms and decided that it was the place she needed to be. Gu Shijio then sat on a tree to take a rest. All alone, it was time for her to think about the fragments of memory that she had just recovered. Suddenly, she was reminded of her first encounter with Fan Qianshi. Coincidentally, it happened where peaches blossomed. She saved his life from a brutal murder. With a sigh, she sat up and saw that the peaches were almost ripe. Some were pink and some were red. Others were green. Wonderful colors filled the gaps between branches. She plucked a peach and washed it with a cleaning spell before putting it into her mouth, which reminded her that peaches used to be one of her favorite foods. Every time the peaches were ripe, Fan Qianshi would always collect and slice the peaches into small pieces before delivering them to her. As an invaluable handyman, Fan Qianshi perfected his cooking skills in order to please Gu Zijia's greedy stomach. Knowing what she liked, he learned to make many different cuisines using peaches. He made soup with peaches, wine with peaches, and even preserved the peaches as snacks. Recognizing that her only disciple was dead, she suddenly lost all her appetite, even though the peaches looked tempting. Someone reached out to her and took away the peach from her hand. Shocked, Gu Shijio turned to her side and saw Di Fui sitting on another branch with a peach in his hand. Are you craving for peaches? The taste of these are not good at all. They are even hard to swallow. You will not like it, Difui said. Intrigued, Gu Shijiao answered. You have not even tasted it yet. How do you know that it does not taste good? She plucked a big one that bloomed in full pink and continued. These peaches look so good, don't they? I'm telling you that these peaches are good. I have tasted them before, and they're just as good as the ones from the upper bound. Difui's expression was hard to study as he replied, Baby, what you think is not what you know. Give it a try. Gu Shijiao gave it a quick wash before taking a deep bite into its flesh. Unfortunately, all she tasted was disappointment. The peach looked tempting, but its taste was unexpectedly bitter and sour. Nonetheless, she could not spit it out, as Difui was there to observe her. With the urge to prove her point, she decided to swallow the peach, even though it tasted really bad. Is it good? Difui tried to guess from her expression. Gu Shijiao insisted, not bad. Amused, Difui then answered with a smile. Good to know. I know that you like to eat peaches. In that case, you should finish the whole fruit. Gu Shijiao hesitated. All good things should be shared between us. It is better to be happy together. Here, have half of it. She then split the peach into 2 halves and handed the first half to Difui. Have a taste of it, she urged in enthusiasm. Difui gave her a quick look before accepting her offer. He took the first bite and swallowed it without any hesitation. He then continued to take the second and third bite. Gu Shijiao started to question if his taste buds had failed to function. Worried that the peaches might be poisoned, she quickly took the fruit from him and tossed it away, together with her half. Stop eating it. What if the fruit was poisoned? Difui wrapped his arms around her waist and happily said, I will accept everything that is given to me by my beloved wife, even if it is poisoned. Gu Shijiao was at a loss for words. His presence had taken away all of her sorrow. Nevertheless, she could not help but look at him with judgment for a moment. As the master of the heavenly law, shouldn't you be less flirtatious? Difui caressed her hair and replied, No matter who I have become, I will always be your man. I do not care who you really are, a god of creation, or even just a normal immortal. You have always been, and will always be, my woman. There is no changing it. Pampered, Gu Shijiao buried her head into his chest. Ever since they recovered their real identities, there had not been many chances for them to talk, as there were many things that required their immediate attention. Finally, they had some time to be alone. Apparently, Difui was still the same man. The change of his identity did not bring about the change in his attitude. Meanwhile, Gu Shijiao continued to examine the peaches and asked, How did you know that these peaches tasted bad? Have you tried them before? Casually, Difui leaned against the tree but still had his arms around her. Silly, this place is close to a village with many children. If the peaches tasted so good, why would there be any left at all? Those kids would have finished them. He was right. As usual, Gu Shijiao would have figured it out herself if she had not been so preoccupied with the loss of her disciple. I briefly remember that the peaches here taste good. Difui calmly explained, Some things may seem beautiful in your memory, but what happens in reality may not turn out to be the same. Things change, so there is no need for you to keep thinking about it. Enlightened, Gu Shijiao knew that Difui was trying to give her an understanding of the situation. In fact, he was right. She put herself through a struggle by only remembering the good parts of the story when something was forever lost. She forgot that there were also some bad parts of the same story, too. She looked at him, only to catch his eyes looking back straight at her. The look in his eyes was intense, as if he was studying her. Why are you looking at me like that? She felt herself blushing scarlet. Baby, you are so beautiful. Captivated by her beauty, Difui gently traced her soft lips with his fingers before leaning in for a passionate kiss. They had been together long enough for Gu Shijiao to know what he was thinking. Her heart thumped at his attempt, but she had to push him away. Don't you unleash your inner beast here in public. Although they were in the woods, there was a village that was really close by. They could not be sure that there would not be any visitors. Difui laughed out loud. Of course, let's go somewhere else. He then lifted her up, Amused, even her ears started to blush. "That is not what I meant," she said while squeezing his robes in a gentle protest. "This is exactly what I mean," Di Fui whispered. "Shijio, let's have a son, shall we?" Chapter 3067. Anecdote 2. Shiyue, do you want a younger brother or sister? It was a very fine day, with the breeze gently caressing Gu Zijia's face. She sat on a lazy chair, looking very cozy and relaxed. She was only pregnant for 3 months, but her belly made it look as if she was 8 months pregnant. She started to wonder if she had conceived a super baby. The baby was conceived after Gu Shijio and Di Fui were both reinstated. She was the creation deity, and he was the master of the heavenly law, so it should not be a surprise that their union would result in a baby with the best genetics. Hence, it was reasonable for the baby to grow extremely fast. At her current stage of pregnancy, it was easy for her to tell the gender of the baby, but she refused to check. She would rather keep it as a secret, just like most other pregnant women. She felt that the anticipation should be part of the process, and even her little girl was intrigued just as much as she was at the moment. Di Shiyue was already 7 years old, so she knew how to behave well now. However, she was unusually stubborn when it came to the gender of the baby. "I want an older brother." Her answer remained unchanged. Patiently, Gu Shijio explained to her, over and over again, "Shiyue, you're my first child, so the baby can either be your younger brother or sister." Di Shiyue pinched her lips into a thin line and protested, "No, I want an elder brother to look out for me." Gu Shijio could feel a sudden wrench in her heart. She had a feeling that little Shiyue used to have an elder brother, but the illogical thought was soon dismissed. Little Shiyue was her first child, so there was no way that she could have an elder brother. Perplexed, she wondered how the thought came by. 10 months of pregnancy can be compared to a melon. When a melon is ripe, it falls off its stem just like overripe babies. But there was nothing special about that. As far as Gu Shijio was concerned, some legendary men were born in extraordinary ways. She had heard of the legend of Neza, a divine warrior in Chinese mythology. His mother was pregnant with him for 3 years before he was born. Another legend told about the story of Lao Tzu. His mother went through 81 years of pregnancy before giving birth to him. In other words, extraordinary babies tended to stay longer in their mother's bellies for longer periods. Gu Shijio had a feeling that her baby would take a long time in her belly, as she and Di Fui were both deities, and the baby was the first union of their divine bloodlines. To her surprise, the baby had been growing really fast, and very soon, the baby was ready to be born. For months passed, and the baby was already eager to come into the world. Panicked, Gu Shijio actually thought that it was a sign of miscarriage. She tried many ways to keep the baby in her belly, but the baby disregarded her concerns and insisted that it was time for the delivery. Anxiously, she grasped Di Fui's wrist tightly and asked in a tearful voice, "Are we losing the baby?" Di Fui had some experience of dealing with pregnancies. He first observed the size of her belly before he wiped away the cold sweats that broke out on her forehead. "Don't worry, Shijio. Although you have been pregnant for less than 10 months, the baby seems large enough to be delivered. The baby has been growing at an observably fast pace, so maybe he or she is ready," he explained. Gu Shijio was still worried, though. The baby seemed to rush into everything. Would it be healthy? She went into labor with an anxious heart. The pain lasted for an hour, and the baby was finally out. However, she found it unbelievable when she saw what came out of her body. It was not a baby that came out of her body. Instead, it looked like a piece of kryptonite. The stone was about the size of a basketball with irregular edges. With a pale shimmer, it looked like a star in the sky that was viewed up close. However, its surface was not as tough as it seemed. With a smooth and soft texture, it trembled even with the slightest touch. Neza's story reminded Gu Shijio that the legendary hero was also born in a ball of flesh. The emergence of the kryptonite from her body certainly showed parallels to that, and she realized that her baby might be inside the stone. With no regard for the pain of her labor, she quickly cast a spell to summon a sharp blade on her fingertip and was eager to cut the stone open to take out the baby. However, her attempt was immediately stopped by Difui. Shijio, don't. The baby has to develop from within and break the shell from within when the time is ready. We cannot do that right now. Bewildered, Gu Shijio stared blankly at the kryptonite that was still shimmering in 7 colors. Have I just laid an egg? This is rather odd. We are both deities, not birds. Has evolution gone the other way? Are you sure that the baby can break free from within? Will the baby be suffocated? Difui studied the stone for a while and replied, "Don't worry. The baby will be fine." He emphasized once more and then carried the stone away. There was a star formation in sight. Many stars flared up in the night sky, each in its own orbit. Simultaneously, the starlight was directed to a raised platform in the sky. The stone was securely placed on the platform, shining with sparkling light under the influence of the stars. It spun slowly to fully absorb the very essence of the starlight. Di Shiyue came to visit again and sat down next to the wooden table made of a flamboyant tree. That was where the stone was placed. She stared blankly at it, as it had been 3 years since it was first placed here. "Dear brother, you have been there for 3 years now. When are you going to come out?" However, the stone continued to rotate in silence. Father and mother visit every day. In fact, mother is very worried about you. She wonders if you will not make it out on your own. She tried to help a few times, but her father stopped her. "I am told by my mother that you will be my younger brother. I cannot wait to see your face. You must look really handsome. By the way, they finally have a name for you, Dihao. Doesn't it sound noble and refined? Father came up with a name for you. Mother, too, came up with a nickname. She calls you her little star. After all, you were born in a starstone." Di Shiyue talked on and on. She did not realize that the stone skipped its usual rotation and trembled a little when she mentioned its nickname. "Little Star sounds good. I am sure you will look adorable. I have seen a child whose nickname is Little Bun because he looks soft and cute, but I still prefer the nickname Little Star." Meanwhile, the stone slowed down its rotation. "I have decided. From now on, I will call you the Little Star. I will visit you every day to call you by your nickname so that you can get used to it. I am sure you will like it." Di Shiyue announced her decision. The stone appeared to stop spinning as if it had fallen into quiet contemplation. Di Shiyue talked on for a while before noticing that the spinning had come to a stop. Panicked, she leaned forward to get a better look. "Little Star, why aren't you spinning anymore?" She was worried that something might happen to it, so she tried to study and see if there was anything wrong, but she could not find anything. She could not help but point her finger at the stone and gave it a gentle poke. To her utter surprise, a few cracks started to form on the surface of the stone. Certainly, Di Shiyue felt a surge of anxiety. With a dumbfounded look on her face, she quickly called out loud for help. "Father, mother, come right here." Difui and Gu Shijio both arrived in the blink of an eye. Together, they witnessed a miracle. Under the stars, the stone opened up like a bud that was bursting forth. Every petal was in the shape of a pentagonal star. Layer by layer, the petals arranged themselves neatly on the wooden table before revealing the baby that had been secured within the layers for years. Gu Shijio held her breath until the very last moment of the revelation. At last, her heart was filled with immense joy. The baby boy looked so beautiful with his exquisite features and looked to be about 6 months old. His body was covered in a tiny piece of clothing of royal blue, and his pitch-black hair was complete and soft. He opened his eyes, revealing his crystal-clear eyes that glistened under the starlight. He took a quick look at Difui, Gu Shijio, and Di Shiyue before reaching out his tiny hands to his parents to ask for a hug. "Mother, father." As a newborn, he could already talk. His sweet smile melted Gu Zijia's heart. Eagerly, she stepped forward to hug him. However, when she called out his name, she could not help but feel a little sad, like she had finally found what she had been missing for so long. She felt as though she did not want to let go of him ever again. Difui seemed relieved as well. He hugged the boy closely to examine his potential. Obviously, The boy was born with extraordinary spiritual power, which made him a quality successor to continue De Fuy's work in the future. Little one, you have finally revealed yourself. He then pinched the boy's arms and legs to determine his fitness before developing training plans to unleash the boy's potential. Dihao was shocked to see the calculative look in his father's eyes. Without further hesitation, he reached out to his mother for help as he found his father quite intimidating. He was only a newborn, and yet his father was already planning to train him. Honestly, he was not ready to be a successor to such a powerful man. He was just a boy at the moment. Mother, father, let me hold him. Let me hold him. Di Shiyue circled Gu Shijio in excitement. She was eager to hug her little brother. Gu Shijio did not want to disappoint her, so after informing her of some precautions, she then passed the baby boy to her. Excitedly, Di Shiyue stared right at the baby's big, bright eyes. My baby brother, you are so soft. Eagerly, she then proposed, Brother, shall we take a walk around the sky? Before she asked for her parents' permission, she was already flying with her baby brother into the sky. After a round of training, she could already keep her balance well. Steadily, her dress danced in the winds while she glided in the air. Worried that her baby brother might be uncomfortable in the winds, she set up a wizardry barrier to turn the gusts into mild breezes to make the flying experience a pleasant one for him. Baby brother, what do you think about my flying skills? Di Shiyue excitedly asked. Good, but not as good as mine, Dihao answered. Di Shiyue raised her eyebrow at him in disbelief. You are a newborn. How can you learn to fly right away? What if I can really fly? If you can fly, I will refer to you as my big brother. With a smile, Dihao let go of her arms and found himself standing on a cloud. Swiftly, he then grasped Di Shiyue by her wrist and led her higher into the sky. Di Shiyue gaped at him, not believing that he could already fly on his own. You? Come, Shiyue. Don't forget to refer to me as your big brother. Di Shiyue said something else instead. Little star. Not this one. Shiyue, my flying is better than yours, so you must do as promised. Come, call me your big brother. Di Shiyue was quite reluctant to call a newborn baby her big brother. She could not do it. However, she did not want to break her promise as well, so instead, she changed the topic. She took a look and saw a happening market that was situated right ahead. Perplexed, she asked, Where are you taking me? I am getting you a set of 9 rings. Chapter 3068. Anecdote 3. The firmament stone from the very beginning, I always knew that I was a unique piece of jade. Other jade were just regular green stones, but I used to be a star stone that regulated the balance for all lives. The master of the heavenly law used the stars to exert control over everything. The number of star stones corresponded to the number of continents that he had under his command. All these star stones worked together as messengers to deliver law in order to the guardians of the heavenly law to be carried out, respectively. I had many siblings, each with a special talent, and each owned by an independent guardian. I was the latest one that came alive. When I was born, the master of the heavenly law was still recovering from a catastrophe. He seemed weak, delicate, and vulnerable. He was attempting to channel a fragmented piece of his soul into my body. I was confused. As far as I could tell, I was in the forbidden land of God. The place was covered heavily with many star stones, but the master of the heavenly law looked completely out of strength as he stood at the altar. He was caressing me while addressing me as Shijio. Shijio, I will not let you fade into oblivion. You have to come back. I will do everything that I can to make sure you come back. That was how I found out that the soul that I was obliged to carry was called Shijio. However, the soul was too severely damaged to the point where its fragments were made up of thousands of little fragments. It was incomplete even if all those pieces were combined together. Besides, it did not contribute to the soul's consciousness, or at least that was what I thought. The master of the heavenly law put a drop of blood on my body, stating that the blood was, in fact, extracted from his heart. The blood had the spiritual resources that could nourish the soul's fragments back to a whole. Also, he secured a perimeter around me, so that no one could interfere with the recovery. He wanted me to focus on the recovery of the soul to make sure nothing would go wrong. According to him, he needed some time to recover too, but by the time he was ready, he would perform a spell to bring the fragments together into a complete soul and revive it. In 100 years, he promised to bring her alive. However, plans changed all the time. Right after he kept me under his sleeves, he came across Fan Qianshi, who was already on the verge of breaking down. The madman insisted on trespassing the forbidden land of God. Knowing how much Shizhou cared about her only disciple, the master of the heavenly law decided to go after the madman into the forbidden land of God to save him. However, the use of a forbidden spell to gather her fragmented soul had crucially drained off most of his spiritual power. Furthermore, he had to use his remaining strength to bring me into existence and grant me the special ability to secure her soul. With that said, he was already a spent force. Perhaps Fan Qianshi was too driven by his grief and indignation, so he did not think twice before stepping into the grand hall of the forbidden land of God. The hall was shut right after his abrupt entry, so not even the master of the heavenly law was permitted to enter. He did not plan to follow his footsteps anyway, and took his time to focus on his recovery instead. When the hall was finally opened again, Fan Qianshi could be seen slowly re-emerging from the inside. The events that followed were baffling. Both Fan Qianshi and the master of the heavenly law forgot about the existence of Shizhou. I too forgot about her. I even forgot that I still kept a piece of her fragmented soul in my body. The master of the heavenly law used a secret spell to keep her soul hidden in my body such that without a unique method of revelation, the soul would remain sealed and undisclosed. Upon rediscovering his identity as the master of the heavenly law, he regained access to many other star stones. But as for me, I was kept away and forgotten in the very corner of his storage bag. I was not ready to waste my life away, so I waited for an opportunity to break free from the confinement. One day, I fell out of his bag and onto his chessboard during an ongoing game with Fan Qianshi. My unwelcomed arrival on the board was announced with a loud bang. Coincidentally, I broke a chess piece on the board. The master of the heavenly law picked me up to have a better look at me. "This stone looks fancy," Fan Qianshi teased. "I did not expect that we would find something so fancy from you, Divine Lord. From the look of its vivid colors, it looks different from other stones." The master of the heavenly law put me on the board as he said, "It has unfortunately broken one of my pieces here, so it has to replace it." I was obviously better than that chess piece. In fact, it was a downgrade for me. To make matters worse, he even offered to give me away. If Fan Qianshi won the game, I would be given to him as a gift. Fan Qianshi liked me, so he agreed to the offer and started to play with more effort. However, Fan Qianshi's skill was incomparable to that of the master of the heavenly law. He was defeated eventually, though he had tried his best. As a result, I stayed on as the master of the heavenly law's possession. I was frustrated by his lack of courtesy, for he had clearly underestimated my value as a stone of the heavenly law. One day, I decided to leave him and embarked on a voyage of discovery in the universe. I also got myself a great name, the Firmament Stone. Many years passed to the point where I lost track of time and started to forget where I actually came from. All I could remember was that I was extraordinary and that I needed to safeguard something precious. Sadly, I could not remember what it was about. Fan Qianshi and I crossed paths again, which was purely coincidental. He still remembered me. "Hey, isn't this the lucky stone?" I was offended by his terrible remark. He was the lucky one to have crossed paths with me. Fan Qianshi took me away, saying that my shimmer attracted him. He wanted to turn me into a night lamp to decorate his room. I could not fight him, nor could I accept my fate of becoming a night lamp. Therefore, I decided to keep all of my charms away and became a regular gray stone with a rough surface. Fan Qianshi knew that I was reluctant to belong to him, so he started to check on me in an attempt to restore my charm. A strange combination of circumstances led him to discover the fragment of the soul that was hidden in my body. Abruptly, he turned me off, but when I regained my consciousness later, I suddenly became a bracelet on the wrist of a mad scientist, Long Fan. I felt lost, like something in me was missing. I looked into every corner of my body, but everything was still intact. I sat pondering what had happened, as it felt as if I had lost the true meaning of life. Meanwhile, life went on with the mad scientist. I had learned many skills and met many people, but nothing could bring me back the memories of my past. I had a feeling that I was meant to be a guardian for someone, but I could never remember who that person was. Long Fan said that I was a very advanced version of artificial intelligence. Being a stone of the heavenly law, I was told that I had the ability to access the heavenly laws as well. Therefore, he assigned a mission to me. He brought me across the universe and gave me a lot of information about the Phasian kingdom. My target was to find a woman named Gu Shijio and stay by her side as her indispensable helper. When I first saw Gu Shijio at the auction, my cold heart was immediately overwhelmed with emotions. It was her. It was always her. She was the one that I was supposed to guard. It felt like a reunion after being apart for a long time. My life was finally complete. Shiyue, do you want a younger brother or sister? It was a very fine day, with the breeze gently caressing Gu Shijia's face. She sat on a lazy chair, looking very cozy and relaxed. She was only pregnant for 3 months, but her belly made it look as if she was 8 months pregnant. She started to wonder if she had conceived a super baby. The baby was conceived after Gu Shijio and Difui were both reinstated. She was the creation deity, and he was the master of the heavenly law, so it should not be a surprise that their union would result in a baby with the best genetics. Hence, it was reasonable for the baby to grow extremely fast. At her current stage of pregnancy, it was easy for her to tell the gender of the baby, but she refused to check. She would rather keep it as a secret, just like most other pregnant women. She felt that the anticipation should be part of the process, and even her little girl was intrigued just as much as she was at the moment. Di Shiyue was already 7 years old, so she knew how to behave well now. However, she was unusually stubborn when it came to the gender of the baby. I want an older brother. Her answer remained unchanged. Patiently, Gu Shijio explained to her, over and over again, Shiyue, you are my first child, so the baby can either be your younger brother or sister. Di Shiyue pinched her lips into a thin line and protested, No, I want an elder brother to look out for me. Gu Shijio could feel a sudden wrench in her heart. She had a feeling that little Shiyue used to have an elder brother, but the illogical thought was soon dismissed. Little Shiyue was her first child, so there was no way that she could have an elder brother. Perplexed, she wondered how the thought came by. 10 months of pregnancy can be compared to a melon. When a melon is ripe, it falls off its stem, just like overripe babies. But there was nothing special about that. As far as Gu Shijio was concerned, some legendary men were born in extraordinary ways. She had heard of the legend of Neza, a divine warrior in Chinese mythology. His mother was pregnant with him for 3 years before he was born. Another legend told about the story of Lao Tzu. His mother went through 81 years of pregnancy before giving birth to him. In other words, extraordinary babies tended to stay longer in their mother's bellies for longer periods. Gu Shijio had a feeling that her baby would take a long time in her belly, as she and Difui were both deities, and the baby was the first union of their divine bloodlines. To her surprise, the baby had been growing really fast, and very soon, the baby was ready to be born. For months passed, and the baby was already eager to come into the world. Panicked, Gu Shijio actually thought that it was a sign of a miscarriage. She tried many ways to keep the baby in her belly, but the baby disregarded her concerns and insisted that it was time for the delivery. Anxiously, she grasped Difui's wrist tightly and asked in a tearful voice, "Are we losing the baby?" Difui had some experience of dealing with pregnancies. He first observed the size of her belly before he wiped away the cold sweats that broke out on her forehead. Don't worry, Shijio. Although you have been pregnant for less than 10 months, the baby seems large enough to be delivered. The baby has been growing at an observably fast pace, so maybe he or she is ready, he explained. Gu Shijio was still worried, though. The baby seemed to rush into everything. Would it be healthy? She went into labor with an anxious heart. The pain lasted for an hour, and the baby was finally out. However, she found it unbelievable when she saw what came out of her body. It was not a baby that came out of her body. Instead, it looked like a piece of kryptonite. The stone was about the size of a basketball with irregular edges. With a pale shimmer, it looked like a star in the sky that was viewed up close. However, its surface was not as tough as it seemed. With a smooth and soft texture, it trembled even with the slightest touch. Neza's story reminded Gu Shiju that the legendary hero was also born in a ball of flesh. The emergence of the kryptonite from her body certainly showed parallels to that, and she realized that her baby might be inside the stone. With no regard for the pain of her labor, she quickly cast a spell to summon a sharp blade on her fingertip and was eager to cut the stone open to take out the baby. However, her attempt was immediately stopped by Di Fui. Shijio, don't. The baby has to develop from within and break the shell from within when the time is ready. We cannot do that right now. Bewildered, Gu Shijio stared blankly at the kryptonite that was still shimmering in 7 colors. Have I just laid an egg? This is rather odd. We are both deities, not birds. Has evolution gone the other way? Are you sure that the baby can break free from within? Will the baby be suffocated? Di Fui studied the stone for a while and replied, Don't worry. The baby will be fine. He emphasized once more and then carried the stone away. There was a star formation in sight. Many stars flared up in the night sky, each in its own orbit. Simultaneously, the starlight was directed to a raised platform in the sky. The stone was securely placed on the platform, shining with sparkling light under the influence of the stars. It spun slowly to fully absorb the very essence of the starlight. Di Shiyue came to visit again and sat down next to the wooden table made of a flamboyant tree. That was where the stone was placed. She stared blankly at it, as it had been 3 years since it was first placed here. Dear brother, you have been there for 3 years now. When are you going to come out? However, the stone continued to rotate in silence. Father and mother visit every day. In fact, mother is very worried about you. She wonders if you will not make it out on your own. She tried to help a few times, but her father stopped her. I am told by my mother that you will be my younger brother. I cannot wait to see your face. You must look really handsome. By the way, they finally have a name for you, Di Hao. Doesn't it sound noble and refined? Father came up with a name for you. Mother, too, came up with a nickname. She calls you your little star. After all, you were born in a star stone. Di Shiyue talked on and on. She did not realize that the stone skipped its usual rotation and trembled a little when she mentioned its nickname. Little Star sounds good. I am sure you will look adorable. I have seen a child whose nickname is Little Bun because he looks soft and cute, but I still prefer the nickname Little Star. Meanwhile, the stone slowed down its rotation. I have decided. From now on, I will call you the Little Star. I will visit you every day to call you by your nickname so that you can get used to it. I am sure you will like it. Di Shiyue announced her decision. The stone appeared to stop spinning as if it had fallen into quiet contemplation. Di Shiyue talked on for a while before noticing that the spinning had come to a stop. Panicked, she leaned forward to get a better look. Little Star, why aren't you spinning anymore? She was worried that something might happen to it, so she tried to study and see if there was anything wrong, but she could not find anything. She could not help but point her finger at the stone and gave it a gentle poke. To her utter surprise, a few cracks started to form on the surface of the stone. Certainly, Di Shiyue felt a surge of anxiety. With a dumbfounded look on her face, she quickly called out loud for help. Father, Mother, come right here. Di Fui and Gu Shijio both arrived in the blink of an eye. Together, they witnessed a miracle. Under the stars, the stone opened up like a bud that was bursting forth. Every petal was in the shape of a pentagonal star. Layer by layer, the petals arranged themselves neatly on the wooden table before revealing the baby that had been secured within the layers for years. Gu Shijio held her breath until the very last moment of the revelation. At last, her heart was filled with immense joy. The baby boy looked so beautiful with his exquisite features and looked to be about 6 months old. His body was covered in a tiny piece of clothing of royal blue, and his pitch-black hair was complete and soft. He opened his eyes, revealing his crystal-clear eyes that glistened under the starlight. He took a quick look at Di Fui, Gu Shijio, and Di Shiyue before reaching out his tiny hands to his parents to ask for a hug. Mother, father. As a newborn, he could already talk. His sweet smile melted Gu Zijia's heart. Eagerly, she stepped forward to hug him. However, when she called out his name, she could not help but feel a little sad, like she had finally found what she had been missing for so long. She felt as though she did not want to let go of him ever again. Di Fui seemed relieved as well. He hugged the boy closely to examine his potential. Obviously, the boy was born with extraordinary spiritual power, which made him a quality successor to continue Di Fui's work in the future. Little one, you have finally revealed yourself. He then pinched the boy's arms and legs to determine his fitness before developing training plans to unleash the boy's potential. Di Hao was shocked to see the calculative look in his father's eyes. Without further hesitation, he reached out to his mother for help as he found his father quite intimidating. He was only a newborn, and yet his father was already planning to train him. Honestly, he was not ready to be a successor to such a powerful man. He was just a boy at the moment. Mother, father, let me hold him. Let me hold him. Di Shiyue circled Gu Shijio in excitement. She was eager to hug her little brother. Gu Shijio did not want to disappoint her, so after informing her of some precautions, she then passed the baby boy to her. Excitedly, Di Shiyue stared right at the baby's big, bright eyes. My baby brother, you are so soft. Eagerly, she then proposed, Brother, shall we take a walk around the sky? Before she asked for her parents' permission, she was already flying with her baby brother into the sky. After rounds of training, she could already keep her balance well. Steadily, her dress danced in the winds while she glided in the air. Worried that her baby brother might be uncomfortable in the winds, she set up a wizardry barrier to turn the gusts into mild breezes to make the flying experience a pleasant one for him. Baby brother, what do you think about my flying skills? Di Shiyue excitedly asked. Good, but not as good as mine, Di Hao answered. Di Shiyue raised her eyebrow at him in disbelief. You are a newborn. How can you learn to fly right away? What if I can really fly? If you can fly, I will refer to you as my big brother. With a smile, Di Hao let go of her arms and found himself standing on a cloud. Swiftly, he then grasped Di Shiyue by her wrist and led her higher into the sky. Di Shiyue gaped at him, not believing that he could already fly on his own. You? Come, Shiyue. Don't forget to refer to me as your big brother. Di Shiyue said something else instead. Little star. Not this one. Shiyue, my flying is better than yours, so you must do as promised. Come, call me your big brother. Di Shiyue was quite reluctant to call a newborn baby her big brother. She could not do it. However, she did not want to break her promise as well. So instead, she changed the topic. She took a look and saw a happening market that was situated right ahead. Perplexed, she asked, Where are you taking me? I'm getting you a set of 9 rings. Comments wedding _ 1998 how air red heart, tier 81 red heart, El Ciego, 38, he is back. Clapping hands, thumbs up, smiling face with hard eyes, smiling face with hearts, smiling face with hard eyes, smiling face with hearts, chapter 3068. Anecdote 3. The firmament stone from the very beginning, I always knew that I was a unique piece of jade. Other jades were just regular green stones, but I used to be a star stone that regulated the balance for all lives. The master of the heavenly law used the stars to exert control over everything. The number of star stones corresponded to the number of continents that he had under his command. All these star stones worked together as messengers to deliver law in order to the guardians of the heavenly law to be carried out, respectively. I had many siblings, each with a special talent, and each owned by an independent guardian. I was the latest one that came alive. When I was born, the master of the heavenly law was still recovering from a catastrophe. He seemed weak, delicate, and vulnerable. He was attempting to channel a fragmented piece of his soul into my body. I was confused. As far as I could tell, I was in the forbidden land of God. The place was covered heavily with many star stones, but the master of the heavenly law looked completely out of strength as he stood at the altar. He was caressing me while addressing me as Shigio. Shigio, I will not let you fade into oblivion. You have to come back. I will do everything that I can to make sure you come back. That was how I found out that the soul that I was obliged to carry was called Shigio. However, the soul was too severely damaged to the point where its fragments were made up of thousands of little fragments. It was incomplete even if all those pieces were combined together. Besides, it did not contribute to the soul's consciousness, or at least that was what I thought. The master of the heavenly law put a drop of blood on my body, stating that the blood was, in fact, extracted from his heart. The blood had the spiritual resources that could nourish the soul's fragments back to a whole. Also, he secured a perimeter around me so that no one could interfere with the recovery. He wanted me to focus on the recovery of the soul to make sure nothing would go wrong. According to him, he needed some time to recover too, but by the time he was ready, he would perform a spell to bring the fragments together into a complete soul and revive it. In 100 years, he promised to bring her alive. However, plans changed all the time. Right after he kept me under his sleeves, he came across Fan Qianshi, who was already on the verge of breaking down. The madman insisted on trespassing the forbidden land of God. Knowing how much Shigio cared about her only disciple, the master of the heavenly law decided to go after the madman into the forbidden land of God to save him. However, the use of a forbidden spell to gather her fragmented soul had crucially drained off most of his spiritual power. Furthermore, he had to use his remaining strength to bring me into existence and grant me the special ability to secure her soul. With that said, he was already a spent force. Perhaps Fan Qianshi was too driven by his grief and indignation, so he did not think twice before stepping into the grand hall of the forbidden land of God. The hall was shut right after his abrupt entry, so not even the master of the heavenly law was permitted to enter. He did not plan to follow his footsteps anyway, and took his time to focus on his recovery instead. When the hall was finally opened again, Fan Qianshi could be seen slowly re-emerging from the inside. The events that followed were baffling. Both Fan Qianshi and the master of the heavenly law forgot about the existence of Shigio. I too forgot about her. I even forgot that I still kept a piece of her fragmented soul in my body. The master of the heavenly law used a secret spell to keep her soul hidden in my body, such that without a unique method of revelation, the soul would remain sealed and undisclosed. Upon rediscovering his identity as the master of the heavenly law, he regained access to many other star stones. But as for me, I was kept away and forgotten in the very corner of his storage bag. I was not ready to waste my life away, so I waited for an opportunity to break free from the confinement. One day, I fell out of his bag and onto his chessboard during an ongoing game with Fan Qianshi. My unwelcomed arrival on the board was announced with a loud bang. Coincidentally, I broke a chess piece on the board. The master of the heavenly law picked me up to have a better look at me. "This stone looks fancy," Fan Qianshi teased. "I did not expect that we would find something so fancy from you, Divine Lord. From the look of its vivid colors, it looks different from other stones." The master of the heavenly law put me on the board as he said, "It has unfortunately broken one of my pieces here, so it has to replace it." I was obviously better than that chess piece. In fact, it was a downgrade for me. To make matters worse, he even offered to give me away. If Fan Qianshi won the game, I would be given to him as a gift. Fan Qianshi liked me, so he agreed to the offer and started to play with more effort. However, Fan Qianshi's skill was incomparable to that of the master of the heavenly law. He was defeated eventually, though he had tried his best. As a result, I stayed on as the master of the heavenly law's possession. I was frustrated by his lack of courtesy, for he had clearly underestimated my value as a stone of the heavenly law. One day, I decided to leave him and embarked on a voyage of discovery in the universe. I also got myself a great name, the Firmament Stone. Many years passed to the point where I lost track of time and started to forget where I actually came from. All I could remember was that I was extraordinary and that I needed to safeguard something precious. Sadly, I could not remember what it was about. Fan Qianshi and I crossed paths again, which was purely coincidental. He still remembered me. Hey, isn't this the lucky stone? I was offended by his terrible remark. He was the lucky one to have crossed paths with me. Fan Qianshi took me away, saying that my shimmer attracted him. He wanted to turn me into a night lamp to decorate his room. I could not fight him, nor could I accept my fate of becoming a night lamp. Therefore, I decided to keep all of my charms away and became a regular gray stone with a rough surface. Fan Qianshi knew that I was reluctant to belong to him, so he started to check on me in an attempt to restore my charm. A strange combination of circumstances led him to discover the fragment of the soul that was hidden in my body. Abruptly, he turned me off, but when I regained my consciousness later, I suddenly became a bracelet on the wrist of a mad scientist, Long Fan. I felt lost, like something in me was missing. I looked into every corner of my body, but everything was still intact. I sat pondering what had happened, as it felt as if I had lost the true meaning of life. Meanwhile, life went on with the mad scientist. I had learned many skills and met many people, but nothing could bring me back the memories of my past. I had a feeling that I was meant to be a guardian for someone, but I could never remember who that person was. Long Fan said that I was a very advanced version of artificial intelligence. Being a stone of the heavenly law, I was told that I had the ability to access the heavenly laws as well. Therefore, he assigned a mission to me. He brought me across the universe and gave me a lot of information about the Facian Kingdom. My target was to find a woman named Gu Shijio and stay by her side as her indispensable helper. When I first saw Gu Shijio at the auction, my cold heart was immediately overwhelmed with emotions. It was her. It was always her. She was the one that I was supposed to guard. It felt like a reunion after being apart for a long time. My life was finally complete. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.